All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the School District of Prescott Board of Education regular meeting. We'll call the meeting to order. Subject to Section 19.3 Wisconsin statutes, our first item here is to adopt the agenda. Rick, is there any changes to the agenda?
No changes by administration.
All right, take a motion to adopt the agenda.
I move to adopt the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Thank you. Next item is Pledge of Allegiance. Katie, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
What? I was like, did we miss a
All
track?
right,
I don't.
our next item is the public comment, recognition of visitors, and as always, the public comment rules are as follows. Please approach the podium one at a time, stating your name, municipality, and topic you'd like to address. A lot of time is 3 minutes per individual, or 6 if you're representing a group that is present at the meeting. All comments should be directed to the board and not to staff or other participants. The board will not act on any comments that are made during the meeting. The presiding officer may direct the district administrator to follow up with that individual at a later date. And lastly, the public comment section will be limited to 30 minutes unless board action is taken to extend. And please refer to our public comment policy listed on the agenda for a full description of this section of the meeting. So would anybody like to be recognized at this point?
Megan.
All right, we'll move on. Thank you. Good news.
Well, we do have a lot of good news for the month of May, and we're going to turn it over to our student representative, who might be doing something special tomorrow and Friday.
What am I doing tomorrow?
Do we have an award ceremony?
Oh, we do have an award. Okay. We'll get to that.
And I think it's bright and early, isn't it?
Oh, yes. Tomorrow we have the academic breakfast, and that's where we'll award NHS and honors, so be there. And then on Friday, I heard that there's going to be a phenomenal speech done by Katie Hooper, so you should all look forward to that, and if I don't see you in the crowd, then there's going to be a problem. Okay, and then we'll get to the normal business. So the Inclusivity Club just met with 8th graders to get their interest in the group, and the choir just had a concert, which I heard was awesome. The girls softball team is going well, and they just finished their regular season 19-6 and start playoffs next week, and they got the 2 seed. The track team has their middle border conference meet tomorrow night, wrapping up the season before regionals and sectionals, and they have set 8 school records this year. The boys baseball team has 1 week left of conference games against Ellsworth, and if they win both, they win the conference. They also got 2nd seed in playoffs, and they play the winner of GET against West Salem. So very good news this month.
All right, and Katie and I had the pleasure of meeting, was it last Friday?
Yes.
And we kind of just had a kind of a reflection of the year and thanked her for her service representing the students, and she's among the student council, and we kind of talked a little bit about how the elections are being set up for next year. But we also wanted to acknowledge your work, and so if Helen would drum roll, please. We'd like to present you with just a going away present and a thank you for all your service. You did have a nameplate that you're allowed to take with you, but somewhere, somehow, somebody's taken it already. So we're hoping it was you.
I think Helen might have taken it.
Maybe.
She has her eye on it.
I know.
All right.
Thank you.
And congrats. We'll see you Friday. And then from the administrative team, we have a special guest, and so I'm going to ask Joan Simon, who oversees our National History Day, and also a student, Paige, and she is going to come up and talk about the competition through the year, and she is probably not going to share with you, so I'm going to tell you that she is going to nationals. So, Joan, you want to introduce everybody?
This is Paige Hope, and National History Day is a nationwide program that inspires young people to learn about the past through in-depth research, analysis, and creative presentation of historical topics. This year we had 12 students go to the regional contest at UW Eau Claire. We had 3 middle school projects and 6 high school projects. Students pick a topic that they would like to research, and then they relate it to the yearly theme. And this year's theme was rights and responsibilities in history. We had topics like Brown versus Board of Education, the history of Legos, which was phenomenally interesting. Like, I did not know anything about Lego, and there's a reason that they're such a big company. X-Troop, the Secret Jewish Commandos, which Helen's son and one of the other 7th graders, again, a topic that the judges had never heard of it, so that was kind of cool. Title IX, the Women of Lowell, the establishment of the National Park Service, LGBTQ rights, the Native Excursion, a take on Native American life, and then Paige's documentary, Don't Tread on Her, the history and significance of Roe versus Wade. At Eau Claire, the Women of Lowell won the Labor History Award, and 4 projects advanced to the state contest. The X-Troop group went to state, the establishment of the national parks went, the Native Excursion went, and Paige's documentary, which brings us to our good news. She competed against 17 other documentaries from high school students around the state and finished in the top 2, earning her a trip to College Park, Maryland to compete at the national contest. So I'm going to turn it over to Paige so she can tell you a little bit about her project and History Day.
So I did mine, a documentary on Roe v. Wade, and I kind of procrastinated it, not gonna lie. But I did it through CapCut, a lot of primary sources. I found a lot of like really old, like from the 70s of like the court cases, like the real videos, the real audio, so that was really cool. And then threw that all into my documentary, and then Eau Claire, really, okay, first off, what you do like at the competitions is you'll play the thing on for the judges, and then they'll like interview you, they'll ask you like, oh, how did you make the documentary, what made you choose this topic, are there anything that shocked you that you found out, and then they'll judge, and then you get the results if you're moving on. I did it in 8th grade, I did this in 8th grade. It was an experience, but I'm very excited, and it was very fun, and I chose my topic because I think it's very relevant to today. It's very relevant to today, and I think it's a very important thing to talk about. And that was...
Nice job, Paige.
Mention at College Park, there'll be about 300 students from across the U.S. and the world, actually. They have international teams. And this year, the evaluations for Paige and then actually Brady Engeldinger were the highest scores we've ever had in the 15 years we've been doing this. So really a lot to be proud of. So
It's great.
Thanks.
Thank you, Joan.
yeah, very cool.
And as you can see up on the good news, that kind of the loop that goes through, you can see that there's a lot of wonderful events that have occurred. Our student artwork has been put up at the Orange Dragon, and we've had a lot of showings, a lot of students engaged, and this could not occur without our staff stepping up and taking leadership roles that go above and beyond the classroom. So thank you to all of them. The superintendent update is really just a rolling calendar. They're making sure that we look to my left and make sure that Katie is available on Friday the 23rd at 7 p.m. because that is our high school graduation, the class of 2025. I remember standing and talking to the class of 2016, 10 years ago, and I talked about beginning my journey with the Prescott Public Schools as theirs was ending. And so this will be a decade where both of us are experiencing the same experience of saying goodbye to a very special place. We have a grade 5 graduation on June 2nd. Our kindergarten graduation is June 3rd. We do have a special internal Professional Development Day checkout with our staff on June 4th when we celebrate retirements and years of service. And then I shared with you all a note from Jeremy Kerg highlighting some students that have participated in our youth apprenticeship system and program and how it's grown over the years. And so AJ Roll and Kaylin, is it Rain? is it Reen?
Ryan.
Ryan, sorry. So Kaylin Ryan were spotlighted and highlighted in that magazine. So shout out to our counselors and also students. It's a wonderful program and obviously supported by our school board. And then our new wheels did arrive, so the new school bus is in-house under the garage and ready to roll. So thank you very much for the support on that. And with that, we'll turn it over to our board president and begin school business.
Thanks, Rick. All right, first item is the consent agenda. We have April 9th work session minutes, April 16th regular board meeting minutes, April 29th special board meeting minutes, April 30th work session minutes, and May 14th special meeting minutes. A lot of meetings. Next one is finance report. We have personnel report for non-licensed staff, selection of depository for investment funds to renew annual designation of First National Bank of River Falls, Prescott, and the local government investment pool as the official school depositories for general funds. Designate an official newspaper and publication of minutes, excuse me, which is to renew the annual designation of Pierce County Journal and the official newspaper as the official newspaper and publication for business minutes. Renewal of WIAA annual membership, renewal of Pitney and Bowes postage meter lease, renew Northwoods Technical College driver's education contract, and finally accept 8 open enrollment applications to the Prescott School District for the 25-26 school year. Board, is there anything in here that you would like to pull out from consent?
I just have a question. The 8 open enrollment applications, are they carryovers from previous years, or are they new to the district?
Those are new too.
Awesome.
Nothing to pull out?
Nope.
All right, I will adopt the consent agenda. Any objections? No objections. Consent agenda is considered adopted. Thank you. Next up, elect school board offices. So again, this is kind of the procedure. We take a motion for each, and then I have to ask 3 times if there's any other nominations, and then we do a second, and then all in favor. So first one on the list is for president. Anybody like to make a nomination here?
I will nominate Michael Matzik as president of the school board.
I'll second.
Well, we have a motion. Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? No other nominations? You got a second, Tanya? Mm-hmm. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That one carries. And the next up is vice president.
I move to elect Tanya Holub as vice president of the school board.
I'll second.
Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? And Pat, you got a second on that one?
Yes.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Next one is the clerk.
Pat, are you the clerk?
I move to elect Pat Block as clerk of the school board. Second.
Well, any other nominations for clerk? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? It seems silly, but that's the rules. We have a motion and a second by Helen. I was going to say Sellen. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That one carries. And lastly, treasurer.
I move to elect Vicki Rudolph as treasurer of the school board.
I'll second.
Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That one also carries. We are done with school board offices. Now, Helen, you got off again this year. Don't worry.
Coincidence? I think not.
Consider personnel reports for new licensed staff. What do we got here, Rick?
Yes.
New hires?
Yes, we have 3 teachers, starting with Jessica Olson at the high school for an ELA, our English teacher, for the 25-26 school year, Alexis Mueller for 2nd grade, and Krista Barker, 7th grade science teacher, who's worked with us as an ongoing sub. We're excited to put these 3 candidates forward.
Anybody have any questions or comments on anything here? Open up. Otherwise, we can take I think we just have.
Yeah, there are no resignations and no retirements.
So we can just move forward with the motion.
I move to approve the personnel report for the licensed staff listed above.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Item D, anonymous donation towards the Angel Fund and R5 Manufacturing.
Yes, so we have somebody in the community that has come forward and has donated. Anything above $5,000 does require board approval. Very happy to announce that we've received $5,000 that'll go to our Angel Fund. That is something that is used to provide support for families that struggle to pay for meals, and also at times for different seasons to make sure that they have clothing or hygiene materials. And then $1,000 is going to R5 Manufacturing that you'll hear a little bit more about later this evening.
All right, anybody have any comments, questions down here? Down here, Pat or Tanya?
No comments. It's awesome. It's
Yeah,
great,
thank
yeah.
you.
It's-
Yes.
Yeah, we appreciate every dollar we get.
I know the Angel Fund money goes a long ways for our students, so it's great.
All right, we can take a motion.
I move to approve an anonymous $6,000 donation, I believe be split between the Angel Fund and R5 Manufacturing.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Next up, the Herb Cole Education Foundation donation.
And so I'm going to ask the board president if he would just read this plaque that arrived, and then I'll talk about what goes along with that.
The Herb Cole Educational Foundation 2025 Vanguard Award is presented to the Prescott Intermediate School for fostering high-quality learning opportunities that drive success for students and teachers.
And so this is a second component of Principal Michael Kosmowski, who was awarded the Herb Cole Outstanding Admin Award earlier in the month, and the school will receive $6,000 that will go towards innovative educational programming at the intermediate for grade 4 and 5. Congratulations to Michael and to his staff at the intermediate school.
Tanya, any comments on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I know Michael, I asked Michael about this once before, and he was so humble and just said it's all about the staff and the people within the building and stuff, but Michael, your leadership has just been super fun to sit back and watch from when you were a science teacher all the way to where you're at now. You're doing awesome things, big things. I know there's more to come, and I'm super proud. I'm super proud to call you one of ours.
Pat?
No, well said. Congratulations. Thank you for all your hard work, and to all the staff that works with you. This is an amazing honor. Thank you.
Nope, just ditto what they said. Very cool.
Yeah, I'm having 3 kids that have went through either that staff or admin. I can't say enough. You guys are amazing, so we appreciate all you do.
Katie?
Well, I don't have any kids that have gone through the school system. I can still tell you're doing a good job.
She just one line in tonight. Good for you.
She knows it's her last meeting, so she can just, yeah.
And thank you for filtering.
Michael, honestly, I mean, it's a well-deserved award, and to your point, I mean, it's a great staff, right? You got great people under you, and it just makes it probably a lot more. It's a lot easier when you got a great team around you, surrounding you with good talent. So it's a well-deserved award, and I mean, very proud to approve the award, I guess, is what we're doing here. So thank you.
The donation.
The donation, yes.
I move to approve a $6,000 donation from the Herb Cole Education Foundation honoring Michael Kosmowski's award going toward the intermediate school.
I'll second.
That's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That one carries. Do you want to, do we give that to him or?
Sure, I know where it works.
Okay. Oh, everybody's full of one-liners.
I know. Jeez.
Next one is to consider the first reading of updated Neola School Board Grievance Procedure Policy 3340 and 4340.
So as you know, the policies for Neola mirror each other. So the first one is for professional staff and then support staff. A couple things that going through the year realized that helping to kind of refine the information. All of you have access to this. You just have to remember to log in. Remember that green is what the changes are. And let's see, okay. Basically, everything is staying the same. It talks about that staff have the right when there is some type of discipline, termination of employment, some type of dispute in the workplace, or something that affects workplace safety. They can, in a very clear and concise manner, have submit a grievance, and then it follows the regular process. What we have learned, though, is that it can be in a school system when you're trying to work with principals, district administrators. You have sometimes breaks that are coming up. You have events either kind of with winter break, and then there's a question about whether or not they're business days, calendar days. Staff have different calendar days than administration. We have certain events that occur. It became somewhat challenging to make sure that we were clear. So going through, basically, licensed staff would report obviously to their principal or supervisor. The supervisor has 10 business days, basically, so 2 weeks to be able to review it. If they are unable to resolve it, it goes to the district administrator. Once it's been reviewed by the supervisor, the staff member has 5 days to move it forward to the district administrator. What we're finding is that, obviously within a week when you're having sometimes student issues, meetings, and things like that, that 5 days to turn things around is not very realistic to put on for a district administrator. And thinking forward for Jim, this would be something that I'm sure he would appreciate. It's basically saying within 3 weeks, the ability to have the grievance heard and to be able to have that taken care of would follow. If that is not resolved, there is the opportunity for an impartial hearing with a hearing officer. That matter shall be referred to the school board for determination of whether or not the grievance may proceed. And then finally, it talks about how the definitions play out. Workplace safety is very specific, and it talks about really more things like physical work, safe operation of OSHA. That sometimes is confused among staff. Termination does not include resignation, retirement, non-renewal. Termination is really something about where the position is reduced or that they're terminated, meaning their contract is not renewed outside of the non-renewal process. And then employee discipline, just clarifying, is that we have staff assignments, improvement, learning plans, oral counseling, reprimands, and regardless of that, some type of written record is going to be placed in the employee's file. Basically to safeguard both for the supervisors, but also for the employee to make sure that it's been documented and that it's come to a conclusion. So those are the changes in the first reading. Any questions?
Tanya, you have any questions on this?
I don't have questions. I do know that 5 days was really challenging. How did you come up with 15 days or 3 weeks?
Basically, I would say from winter break and then this month where we've had a student die by suicide, we've had graduation, and April we had 3 board meetings. I think it's unrealistic for running an organization this large with student issues, student hearings, staff hearings, and budget to say that something like that can go into the stream of what's already been planned out, typically months in advance. So seems to be realistic to be able to have that turned around with what I would say is 2 to 3 weeks. It's still in the same month, and that's how it came.
And that's kind of after that 10 days, the initial 10 and then an additional 15 in their school days. So then kind of, okay. Okay, that's my question.
Pat?
I had a similar question, that makes sense. I appreciate that timing.
Vicki?
Yeah, not realizing it was that short of amount of time, and yeah, just thinking of all the things, trying to squeeze something like that in with how this spring has turned out would be difficult, so yeah, explanation of that is good and helpful.
I have no further questions. Thanks.
No comment.
Do you know, Rick, what other policies look like, other districts and stuff, how long they have?
No, I think
Okay.
it's really more of just trying to figure out how things play out. And different
Yeah.
districts, the size of the district would matter.
Yeah, and the amount of staff that can kind of dive into stuff too. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
For this one, obviously, this is, as we talk about, is the mirror version, which would be, again, just the 10 days to the supervisor. The staff member has 5 days to go above their supervisor or administrator, and then it would come to the district administrator, 15 days, and then the same language at the bottom.
Anybody have any questions on this one? Same thing, pretty much?
No questions, yeah.
All right. If we don't have any questions or comments, we can entertain a motion.
I move to accept the first reading of the above noted policies. These policies will receive a second reading at the next regularly scheduled board meeting.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Helen? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. On to item G, consider the second reading of a new state-required school board policy related to early literacy and grade promotion.
I'll have Michael come up. There are no substantive changes. However, since the last time we met, there is a portion that is now required to have a family notification. And so we sent what is in green to all of you ahead of time, regardless if it goes here or in our annual notifications, it must be added. So legally, we have to add it, and I'll let Michael share why we are proposing it goes into the early literacy.
Yeah, so last month I was up at our CSA 11, our consortium, and some of the legislation around Act 20 is a bit confusing, and there's different legal opinions. And originally, we were told you could put it in a policy, or you could just have it in your learning plan as long as you spell out the definition of a parent and what exactly are you going to notify them. However, as the legislation works through this, they're finding some of the things they put in there, they need to go back and modify. So if you look at this parent notification, it basically says, we will follow the guidance of DPI and notify you with the things we need to notify you with. Currently, that is, what is their test score? Are they at risk or not at risk? A definition of what is at risk. We do have to notify parents of dyslexia and dyslexia screeners. We have to notify them of their right to request additional testing if they'd like. So all those things we're in compliance with, and the way that we wrote it is that if that happens to change, we will just follow whatever that new compliance is, so that way we don't have to come back. And this is what some districts are running into, is they initially put it in their parent notifications, and they spelled it out exactly the way it was spelled out 6 months ago, and now they're going back to their board to revise because now it's been revised. So for us to avoid that, we also thought, between Ms. Dusick and myself, that it made sense that it goes, because all of this is around reading in Act 20, and this is specific to those notifications. So that's why we thought it makes sense to amend this one and put it in there, and that way we're covered.
Helen, do you have any questions for Michael?
No, I don't have any questions. That makes sense.
No, makes sense. Thank you.
Katie, anything on?
Come on, Karen.
Literacy?
Yeah, one line.
Tanya?
I don't have any questions. We looked at this, all the rest before.
No questions.
All right, yeah, I think we're good. Thanks, Michael. Can take a motion.
Yep. I move to accept the second reading of policy 5411 with the following edits or considerations. Right?
That's right? We
Yeah,
got-
just the
Think so.
insert of the family notification.
Okay. Do I have to
All right,
redo that?
nope, we're good.
Okay.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. And item H is to set the date and time of our 25-26 school board meetings. Currently, we do 6 PM on the third Wednesday of each month. I don't know if we need any discussion on that. Everybody good with that? Any question, any problems with it?
I'm good with that. I know that it's been brought up having 2 meetings and like split it so they're shorter. I actually prefer the 1 meeting, but it's up to you guys. I just wanted to bring that up.
Just maybe a question too is 2 years ago, right, when we changed it from 7 o'clock, and in part, board members, but then also the admin team that comes, I would assume everybody is still in favor of 6? It hasn't been a, okay.
I think it's more beneficial, at least from the
Right?
admin.
It's a good thing, right? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd rather get home an hour earlier than we work, so usually it drags on anyways, but. All right, so we can entertain a motion here. Did I just say that out loud?
Yeah, you did.
I move to designate the third Wednesday of each month at 6 PM at Prescott High School as official date, time, and location of the 2025-2026 regular board meetings.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That one carries. And item I is the federal certification of non-discrimination pledge.
If you, similar to Michael's example, right? Anytime you get lawyers involved, you get muddled thinking and you get both sides equally adamant about how things are right and how they should be interpreted. But I did need to bring something to your attention. There is a federal certification for non-discrimination pledge that was sent out to all local educational associations. We were asked to sign off on that pledge and return it to the federal government within a week's time. There were probably 8 different legal webinars for all superintendents within the state of Wisconsin. The challenge is that school districts have never had to sign this pledge. It's about receiving additional money for Title VI. It is something related to inclusivity and diversity, equity, and integration. Every state department up to this point is the department that signs off, and they're the ones that provide the oversight. They receive the monies, they then funnel the money out to the districts, and then they are the ones that monitor and audit that we use the money correctly and that we're abiding by the laws. There was a lot of confusion. Then DPI came out and said that they would not collect any of these letters on behalf of school districts and said that we didn't have to sign these because they are the legal authority. Then we had, 2 days later, another letter that came out to superintendents saying that you should at least ask your council whether or not you should sign it for fear of potentially losing federal money if you didn't sign it. It definitely will go to the courts. I wanted to let you know that the last guidance I received is that the challenge of how the pledge was sent out from the federal government is very vague, ambiguous, and could be far-reaching, meaning that what you're signing, you don't know really what you're signing. But failure to sign also could create loss of funding. And one of the first things you're taught in superintendent school is don't ever sign a document you don't know what you're signing or what the meaning is. However, I won't be here, and it does put the school district, but many other school districts at risk from the DPI's lawyers, and they believe that there is really no rational reason for why you would have to sign it. However, there have been 3 options put forward, is that you can make a motion, we can sign the letter and send it, albeit it is late, but I didn't feel that it was appropriate to sign something that later also could boomerang back on the district in a negative way. You could sign a modified draft, which this is, that DPI helped craft, and send it to DPI, because they changed their stance and said that they would accept the letters on behalf of districts. Or you could sign this letter and send it both to the Office of Civil Rights and also DPI. So this is a modified letter. It is beyond the deadline, but it would basically say that we would follow by the legal obligations that we're required to do so, just like Michael stated, and we are not signing off on any other documentation other than saying we will follow the rules that we're supposed to and not a secondary letter. The other option you have is that I would just not ignore it, so that you could have a record that you discussed it and take a stand, and that rather than table it, you can postpone it until further, more clarified information comes out of the courts with regards to what the federal government is really asking local and state departments to do. So if that's not clear as mud, I don't know what better way to say is that we have a couple options. One, I needed to bring it to you, wanted to share with you, I did not sign it. The one that came from the federal government, we have a modified letter, and if you would like it signed, it would just take board action, I would sign it and then forward it up. Or you could postpone it until you had more clear information either from the federal government, DPI, or the courts.
There's a comma here.
That's why I like English teachers.
Well, hopefully it doesn't matter. Hold on.
Is it this one?
Yeah, it's the one, education's April 20, there's no comma after education.
How's that? Thank you.
Google Doc doesn't like it, though.
I don't care, Google's wrong.
All right.
No, it's cleared up. Look at that, like magic.
Oh, there you go.
Anybody have any strong opinions on this that you want to start, Pat?
Well, I got a couple questions. Have you received the April 3rd reminder of legal obligations? Have we received it?
I would have to go back and check.
Okay. I mean, we should check, because
Yeah.
if we didn't receive it or review it, then we ought not sign it and send it back. When you say lawyers are, we're talking from DPI, legal counsel?
No, there are state lawyers at DPI, but also then we have legal counsel through WASB, and then also webinars that are put on behalf of administrators. So there are webinars that are put on by WASB where the lawyers came forward and kind of shared what the conundrum would be if you signed the letter that came from the federal government and their perspective, and then they also would talk about possibilities that you could take rather than sign it. And then we've heard from Ben Jones, who is the lawyer for DPI, but he can only talk about how DPI interprets, not how the courts would interpret if it gets there. There's not going to be an easy, quick solution. You also know at the federal level, the Department of Education is undergoing some remodeling or being shuttered. And then whether or not Prescott in and of itself would be a big enough fish for this to come up, I can't answer that for you.
Have we had our council look at it, and would they weigh in on it?
They would if I brought it to them. I didn't think it was worth at the time.
I'm trying to understand the risk of not signing it.
The potential of losing federal dollars is what they say.
Yeah, and that's ambiguous too, because on Title VI,
Yeah.
we're talking, overall, we get less than $100,000 from the federal government for all title programs. For Title VI, Sandy would know.
Title VI pertains to the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. So essentially, every year, all school districts in the nation are required to sign an assurance, essentially saying that we abide by all civil rights laws pertaining to public education, and that's how we receive our federal funding.
And so we already do that part.
So this is redundant. This is an effort on the part of the federal government to push their agenda, which is more specific to other issues that are not necessarily.
But do you know how much money is in the Title VI part?
I think it's whatever we get from the feds for our regular operations. Title VI is elementary and secondary education. It's not Title I, II, III, or IV.
Okay.
Yeah.
So.
Mike, maybe that's my question for right now. Maybe go around and see what other questions
Sure,
other people
Tanya?
have.
Yeah, I think Pat brings up a good point, which the first sentence says that we're acknowledging that we got that reminder. And so I think let's make sure we got that reminder before we sign something saying that we did get it. And just for my understanding, I've heard about this and read about this a little bit past, but my understanding is that federally there was something sent, and this is the state's response, and they're giving it to districts that they can choose to use or not use, right?
Correct.
Okay. And I agree. I would not want to sign the federal one, especially if it's ambiguous and sounds like there's a lot of room for interpretation.
That is true.
I'm not opposed to signing this, though. I don't know if I have a reason to not sign this coming from the state, just saying we're following the current laws that we're obligated to follow, not something else. So I'm not opposed to it, but I guess I would have a question about the April 3rd. So I guess if we don't even know that, we probably should postpone this. It's already late. We should probably postpone the conversation then.
Yeah.
But look to you guys to see what you're hearing.
Have any thoughts on this, Vicki?
Thinking.
From a school board perspective?
I have thoughts. No, if we're already,
Our school board.
according to Sandy, every year we do this for Title VI funding. There is no reason to sign something else. If the governor and the state superintendent have filed their lawsuits or pursuing legal to get through this, that's on them. Let them do their job. That's why they're there for us. If DPI receives the funds and then doles it out within the state, then the federal government, they've handed it off, they've done their part, the state then does their part. I'm kind of on board with, yeah, we need to know if we got that reminder, but I'm all for postponing this because things are going through the courts and then they're saying no, and then they're going through the courts again and they're saying yes, and it's just a fight back and forth. And until there's something specific, I'm not willing to give or just put it out there so someone can interpret it any way they want to for whatever district. So
And we've already signed the
For 25?
authorization for next year.
for 25, 26. So I think we let DPI and the state of Wisconsin do their thing. We hold off on this until we find out what exactly needs to happen.
What are other districts doing right now? Like around us? Ellsworth, River Falls?
I would say it's probably 50-50.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, Helen. I cut you
Oh,
off.
that's okay. I can't say much better than that. I also didn't take superintendent classes, but I don't sign anything that you don't have a full knowledge of. That would be silly. So postponing it sounds like the right, while they figure things out.
Yep.
It sounds like the right course of action, so.
Sometimes $100,000 is okay to lose too, so, I mean,
Well, yeah, I mean, that was, and so Rick, that's,
I
right
agree
now, that's
with all
about the
you.
federal
We
funding
should
level.
postpone it.
Right, so
Postpone, yeah,
max
there you go.
risk and highly unlikely. It would be 100, which is real money and lots of it, but
Yeah.
it's not a
Yeah, and
death sentence.
what I can tell you is, even though we've signed off, we all know that the federal monies for next year aren't even promised.
Sure.
So that's part of our headwinds. So it is one of those things that it's a big kerfuffle. It's taken a lot of time and distraction, but I also thought the board needed to be aware.
So my question is too, what is the difference between tabling and postponing?
We just asked WASB.
while you're looking it up, Mike, did you have any thoughts about this?
I say
Sorry.
let them battle it out in the courts and we'll make a decision after that's all done. I agree. I don't think we should sign anything.
Yeah. Typically, when you table something, you say it'll come back at a time defined, or you table it into perpetuity. Postpone just means
Pick another day.
you're saying you're postponing it for a rational reason. And
Yeah.
in this case, you would say, you don't have enough information, and the way you're heading is the court should decide, and that it goes from federal, state to local, and the federal government usurped that.
And at least we're acknowledging it, so it's not like we're ignoring it. It's an agenda item, we formally postpone it, so we acknowledge it, we just haven't made a decision yet. So I think that everything laid out here makes sense to me.
And Courtney, just for the record, does that jive my interpretation with Bob Butler? Okay,
All right,
all right.
so we need a motion though on the postpone. If we want to postpone it, I assume that's what we're doing.
I move to postpone this federal certification until further information is forthcoming by DOE and/or DPI.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries, thank you. And then lastly, we have item J, accept the Health Partners year extension for 26-27, 12% cap.
Yeah, so we had good news last month with the reduction in our rates by 2.5% following a 0.5%. So over the last 2 years, our rates have decreased 3% on premiums, where many districts around us are seeing double-digit increases. The cap has been in place the last few years, and the last 2 years, even with the cap, we've come in based on our usage with negative premium increases. So given the Alera work and giving Jim some time to get his feet under him before kind of taking on an RFP for other proposals or looking at tweaking with self-funding, I'm recommending that you accept Health Partners for another year with a 12% cap. Maintains everything in place, and that would then go into effect for the 26-27 school year.
Vicki, any thoughts or comments on this?
No, I mean, I think we've kind of set kind of a plan in motion with our work sessions that we've had, that we need to pursue this and look forward. But for now, we know where we sit with this, so it's actually good for this year, so I think I'm okay with the information we've been given.
Helen?
Yeah, I think, like we said, some other districts around are seeing double digits there, so the fact that this can come down is good.
Tanya?
Yeah, I'm all for moving forward for one more year. Jim was at our last Alera session, our work session too, and the reality is for the past 2 years, we've actually decreased in our premiums, which is great. I know the 12% cap is real and it could happen, but I think we need to keep giving some time to kind of get creative. We have some really good, ideas kind of moving forward of what we're going to pursue, and that takes time. So this allows us to budget minimally, so.
Pat?
No. No questions. I think executing the strategy we talked about in the work sessions, locking it in for 2 years, knowing that we've seen great results, and working on that strategic playbook that Alara helped us develop is the right move in my opinion.
All right. We'll take a motion.
I move to approve Accepting Health Partners Year extension for the 2026-2027 school year.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That one carries, and we are done with business. We're on to information discussion, and the first item is the summer construction projects.
So I'm going to have Building and Grounds, Mike Hoyka, come forward. He's been here a few nights just kind of talking to you about Fund 46 and all the capital projects that we have. He's also talked about some summer projects that are closing up the bond referendum from 2022. And we wanted to just kind of share, for the first time, not having major construction or moving buildings. There's still...
What are you going to do?
Well, let me tell you, we're going to catch up on some maintenance. So, Mike, thank you for everything you do.
All right. Just give you a little update where we're at. We're going to get more of into a regular summer routine, get back to a lot of stuff we want to maintain and preventive maintenance programs. You can see some of the stuff up there on the top for the high school, like service some makeup air units, and actually we're going to go through all of them anyhow, but getting kind of down with the middle school where we have to working with Market and Johnson for the last few items that are coming up on the referendum projects. Grease trap and some floor drains in the kitchen at the middle school. Actually, we're meeting Friday to go over a lot of dates and times on this stuff when it's going to be done, so we'll be able to lock them in. The gym, divider curtain and bleacher replacement, we talked about that. That's going to be early fall on that. Restroom partitions are ordered. They called and asked if we had a place to store them until they could install them, so I look for them to be coming in first part of June. We have a chilled water leak, replace some fittings and connectors on that with Market and Johnson and Steiner's. Reconnect some gas piping that got disconnected during construction projects. We're going to meet on that, also how we're going to resolve that. We still have some small water leaks in the mezzanines, and we're going to meet again on that on Friday, what possible solutions we'll have for that. And then kind of the other stuff, there's just some regular routine maintenance stuff we'll be doing, recording the gyms, cleaning coils, air handler space number 3 there. We want to add a VAV box here. Now that we got the wrestling room fixed, we're going to have that door shut all the time, so we need to supply some heat into there instead of just opening the door. So we're getting prices on that on Friday. Intermediate school, in the vestibules, we're installing walk-off carpet, very similar like you see at this building and at the elementary, getting rid of those pits where they have the aluminum things there that you just put a rug over it anyhow. So we're eliminating those. Record our gym floor, destratification fans are already done. Gym lobby, replace the exhaust fan in the restrooms in that lobby. 2 fire doors on the second level to get replaced. They're beyond repair. That should be happening the first part of June. They're already ordered in production, so they should be here shortly.
And then, Mike, we recently had many of our buildings lost power. I don't know if there was a power surge or something, but wasn't there?
It was citywide.
Citywide?
Yeah, we had a couple Fridays ago it happened. So.
But didn't it damage?
Fallout is, you'll see that in yellow there. Fallout is at blower coils 1 and 2 with the AC are constantly tripping the breakers. So we need to look at that. We didn't take care of it under the referendum projects in the beginning. One is when we did our study in 18 and 19, they were working perfectly fine. There was no reason to replace them, but unfortunately, now we have to deal with it.
And can you share the uptick because of
The
the,
problem is, we just can't replace the AC part of it, because one is the new Freon. I've been told now that there's the new Freon that is out there now is considered flammable. So your cabinets have to be UL approved if there was ever a leak. So that's the uptick in the cost. So we just have to play the air conditioning part. We can replace the whole cabinet and blower coil in it, so. Got 2 vendors getting us priced together. We're gonna send some more information off to the one of all the specifications and CFMs and all that we need. Meeting with another party Friday afternoon to go over, so we get 2 prices on that. You know, is there a way we can repair it, or do we gotta replace the whole thing? So, looking at that. Don't know where we're at quite on the referendum dollars, if we have any money left over to pay for that out of that or not, but that we'll determine that and then find out how we're gonna have to pay for it, or if we're gonna use Fund 46, or do we wait later and take it out of next year's budget or something, so we'll discuss that. Elementary, not too much going over there. Got a little plumbing to do there. That was part of the referendum dollars, some shut-off valves and faucets in the 63 classrooms. Main jetting from the kitchen to the street, that's something we do. We were doing it every 5 years, but we moved it up to every 3, just because with the last time we did it, there was quite a bit of blockage in there already, so I moved it up to 3 years, so we're doing that now. And it's just regular stuff, playground borders, some mulch. And then under others, that's regular routine stuff we do. Regular inspections for our backflow preventer valves, fire extinguishers, fire alarm inspections, sprinkler stuff, replacing all the filters, our summer floor clear, deep cleaning classrooms, restrooms, locker rooms, so roof inspections, so. And then also to keep up with our permit to operate, our elevators and boilers as they need those inspections, so. Outdoor bleachers, we are doing an inspection this year. We don't do it on an annual basis because of the use. It's not a requirement, but I feel it's safe and wise to do it. So, and actually they were here today, so hopefully they got them done, so. Any questions on anything?
Pat, you have any questions?
Yeah, who was driving? Me. Can you just scroll to the Market Johnson stuff? Rick, so the work that you got tabbed as Market Johnson in column C, so this would represent still the referendum dollars?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
And this would also represent the end of the referendum dollars, we believe.
still in process? Yep.
Still in process.
Yeah, we have one submission, I believe, from RVA, who are the architects, their last quarter. We have the bleachers coming in end of September or October. And then there's some, what they call owner savings. So basically, unfortunately, they have, I think we're on our second superintendent through Market & Johnson.
Yep.
And so paperwork slowed down. So we're still trying to reconcile the books, basically is the answer.
Okay.
But we're solid on, these projects have already been, if they weren't already billed, I think the only one we had to clarify was the chiller repair. The parts have been paid for, we just had to verify that the installation.
The labor part of it, yeah.
Okay.
So, stuff that's been approved already and funds there is the grease trap, divider curtains, bleachers, bathroom partitions. The water leak is debatable where that's going to come out at. The exhaust fan, and of course the shutoff valves. Those were all already approved with Market & Johnson, that we have funds there for them.
Sure.
So that's why the blower coil units That's why I have that one in yellow.
Yep.
We're
Yeah.
kind of, if we can take it out of the referendum dollars, great. If we have some money there, we'll use it out of there. Or maybe it might be part of it, maybe part of it out of there, part of it out of Fund 46. We'll definitely bring that back to you, let you know the dollar amounts and stuff, so.
Because after the true-up, then we'll know if we have any dollars left there. And if everything goes as planned, by this winter, we should be able to close out contractually with River Valley and Market and Johnson.
Definitely with River Valley, Margaret and Johnson. I think the two things will be the mezzanines. You know, we need to get that resolved, which may require some new concrete.
Yeah, I wasn't excited to see a few leaks on the mezzanine still, but.
Is it both of them or the
Well,
one?
that's
Mainly the front one.
mainly the front one. That's
Over the mechanical space?
it's minor. It's minor. You know, it's minor in the north one. That's really not. It's not like saturating or could get in any electrical box or anything like that. You know, still don't want the water leak, but the south one's the one I'm really concerned about because we do have a control panel right there, and it's leaking in that corner,
And we just put a new floor
put a
in.
new floor in. But we got some absorbent mats down, so that we're checking to make sure it doesn't edge to the new flooring. So
There's always an issue or something that'll come up. How have they been performing in terms of warranty and callbacks and punch list stuff? Are you?
when they were on site, not a problem. You know, if you told them about a problem or concern or whatever, they were taking care of it fairly quick. I thought our boilers deal was really drawn out from what it should have been. And now that they're not on site, it's slower, just because you don't have the guy on site. Plus, we're trying to also, the new site superintendent, he's got to get him up to speed on what projects we're doing and where and what. And that's why we're having the meeting on Friday, to go over that, to get all on the same page and timelines, so.
Yeah. Mike, if you had to throw a dart at the cost of that, the AC issue, where would you throw it?
Oh, the one at the intermediate school?
Yeah.
Yeah. 80 to 100,000.
80 to 100? Okay, all right, thank you.
Tanya?
I don't have any questions, no.
Vicki?
Nope, that's why we have Pat.
That's why we have Pat.
Yeah, right.
Hey, really quick on the outdoor bleachers one, does that include the fire hall field bleachers too? Or is that just the high school?
First ones we did today.
Football? Okay. All right. Just checking. Thanks, Mike.
You've heard about that.
No problem.
You stand behind
Michael,
the dugout anyway,
thank you kindly.
so.
I don't sit in
I know.
it, so I wouldn't be able to inspect it. All right, we are on to item B, PDP licensure guiding change process for financial consideration.
Yeah, so we're going to have both Michael and we have teacher reps that'll be here as well. I'll let Michael pull up the guiding change. He and Chantel worked with this. This was kind of a board directive to work with staff around their professional development plans. Michael will give you the history and walk you through some of the information.
Yeah, so as Dr. Spaguzza said, myself and Chantel, I facilitated a teacher group that were on professional development plans. And the focus question we had was, how do we create alternative compensation model that rewards those teachers who successfully completed the PI 34 PDP while a staff member at Prescott School District. So there are people who we have hired that completed PDPs elsewhere. They were not part of this. This was just for people who had completed the PDP while here and are still here. So just some context for the school board of how did we get to kind of where we are is back in 2005, DPI changed their licensure requirements. Previous to that, in order to maintain your license, you had to have 6 college credits every 5 years. And by doing that work, you submitted those transcripts to the DPI along with a background check, and then you were issued a new license. They started a new model in 2005, starting in 2005. Anyone who was in the old model could choose to go into this model, but this model was required for anyone graduating from college after 2005. And what the model was is that they were going to do away with the requirement of those courses at the university level, and instead they were going to do a professional development plan. And part of that professional development plan was, there were a couple different models that you could go with, but you had a mentor that worked with you. You had both a mentor within our district, and we had a mentorship program for that. You also had a mentor at the university level. These professional development plans were a 5-year plan. So it took 5 years to first develop, and that typically was the first year or two, collect background data, because what they were doing with teachers was actually collecting data from their own classrooms or their own schools and trying to change internally what was going on within their classroom. So it was very close to home, and DPI saw that as a slightly different model than go and take a college course in something that you're interested in. It didn't necessarily have to do anything with your licensure area. This directly impacted your classroom. So you went through that process, and throughout the process, you had meetings every year, you had work that you had to do every year. In the end, though, you had to create a portfolio. And I know a little bit about the portfolio because when I was graduating college, I was the 2 years prior to this, but I was on a focus group at UW-Eau Claire where we were building portfolios, basically fake portfolios, but in an online platform, which these lovely people got to use the online platform. So we would do things and we'd give them feedback on what worked and didn't work. And in the end, it sounds like it didn't get much better from the pilot. It wasn't all that user-friendly. I regress. Anyway, so what they were doing is they were doing that. But again, you had to have a mentor here, you had to have an administrator, you had to have someone at the university level. They were all reading these, giving you feedback throughout that process, and then you submitted them to DPI. DPI then had a panel that would read them, and then they would either approve your PDP or they would not. So 2005, first educators that were getting into it. So 5 years later, 2010 was really the first year you were going to have people that were going to be getting license renewal based on this process. Well, around 2010, DPI and our governor did not necessarily see eye to eye, and in 2011, we had Act 10. Previous to that, school boards, and when I was in the union, the teacher union, at that time it wasn't necessarily a priority for the union to figure out what to do with this. Everyone was kind of seeing, what are other districts going to do about the PDP? How are they going to count it? Is this going to be for pay and advancement or not? And then also some people, I'll say, in the union would say, well, I have to pay for my credits in order to get my license renewed. These people don't have to pay dollars, therefore it's not equivalent. So I don't think there was a big push by the union, the teacher union at that time, to make this a priority. And again, with all the changing rules and this being so fresh, I don't think it was a priority of the board at that time to do it as well. And then when it did come time, because the first person that we had that actually had this plan was 2012, by then the union was gone. There was no one advocating for what are we going to do about people who did this professional growth plan versus people that took a college credit of, again, maybe something that interested them, wouldn't necessarily have to be in their licensure area. So they had an initial license, they had a professional one, that was a 10-year plan. No one ever got, or to the master educator, no one got to that because it wasn't around long enough. 2018, they disbanded it. Already starting in 2016, they started talking about removing it. 2017, they were already planning. So there were some people that at that time, their advisors, and the other part is it got exponentially more difficult as time went on to find people to not only be the mentors, but then you had to have an administrator who was certified to do it, and you had to have someone at the university level. Now, when people are first graduating college, yeah, they have connections at the university. But 5 or 10 years down the road, they have no connections anymore. So to find someone who's willing to do it was very difficult. And that was part of the reason why I believe DPI changed the model, is because that model just was not working anymore. People were headhunting and paying others to read them for them. And some took that route, and some, their mentors said, just hold on, it's going to change shortly here, just wait. And we had some educators that did both. We had one educator, as I worked with this group, one educator in Prescott that went through 2 PDP cycles while they were here. Some that were right at the very end of that second PDP cycle, but their mentor said, nope, hold off, and they did. So again, with the changing climate at that time, the lack of a union, the lack of any sort of negotiation, this all just fell on the back burner and fell away. Since then, districts have had to do things to rectify because of the pay inequities that created. Again, the only way at this time for someone to move on the pay scale was to get additional outside credit. There was no reward for this. So as we met as a PDP group and we talked more about what actually went into it, the process, how long did it take. Yes, there was some professional development on PE days, but then there were times where you were out of the classroom, which created more work at home and things like that. Just how are you valuing it? And that's kind of the 3 models that they came up with of what would it look like. It's sort of how is the board going to value it? Because the board back then did not make the decision of, is this equivalent to, if it's for license renewal, is it equivalent to the 6 credit of license renewal? Yes, they didn't pay for it, or is it even better than that because it was directly impacting our kids, our school, our teachers, our students here at Prescott, not a course that you just took because it was a fun, easy course and I could get my credits. Because there were plenty of courses like that. I know because I did a few of those courses when it was down to the wire and I needed credits. You could find an online course for $180 and get 3 college credits for it. So that's kind of where it was at. That's sort of the history lesson here of previously what did you have to do, what did you have to do now, are they equivalent towards each other. As we looked at our desired results, we wanted to value the professionals that we have and value that they're still here with us. And so how do we value that? But we also know that needs to line budgetarily. We know that that's tight. We talk about that all the time. We just had a referendum and we know that that's an issue. But sort of our unacceptable means would be to do nothing. Right? That we want to have finality to this and bring some closure to what's finally happening with the people that were in the PDP. So that's kind of our work together. We met several times. The first time was just kind of laying out this PDP guiding change and just gathering. We sent out a couple different surveys about the PDP process from everyone's point of view. And again, there were different points of view. There were some people that did audit courses that aligned directly to what they were teaching. Others that did do that action research plan in their classrooms. So we looked at a lot of those things. And then one thing that we wanted to be sure is that it's not onesies and twosies, that it's applicable to everyone, which means there will be some people that might feel someone's getting something more than what they are, but we also know that the board has to wrestle with all that, and doing onesies, twosies isn't a good process for you as well. So that's kind of where we're at. We met several times. Again, like I said, there's 9 people that we have identified that are part of this. I think everyone was able to attend a meeting except for one. Some attended every meeting. Some did a lot more research, background work, and things than others. But I think they've got 3 proposals here, and I'm going to actually turn it over to Jamie McDonough so she can talk a little bit about, from her perspective, of someone who went through the PDP and then through this process, and then the 3 proposals themselves and why one over another.
Oh, thank you. You don't have to read it. If you put all that. Oops. That's just for your bedtime leisure reading tonight when you're bored.
And Jamie, just tell me when to advance.
What are we on? Oh, dear. Advance. Okay. These are just kind of the bullet points of what Michael just went over. We did not have a choice to take credits. I will tell you, I would have rather paid. Why didn't I? Because I didn't want to pay and do something else. Another thing that I think is important to understand is while we were doing these PDPs, this also was taking place when the educator effectiveness came into play. So not only were we having to maintain a 5-year PDP, we also had to do yearly PPGs and SLOs along with it, but they couldn't align because your PDP was a 5-year plan. So while you could kind of head in the same direction, it was still additional work, and we were all, required to do the PDP. So this slide is just kind of the bullets of, that we were required to do it. Looking at the issues, here we go. Like Michael said originally, and even now, our pay scale has always been, when you look at lanes, it's always been connected to college credits. That was how you could move over. And this got brought up years ago when we were in our first rounds of could one PDP cycle be counted as that same licensure bump over cycle. And it was talked about and tabled and talked about and tabled many times over the years. While it was tabled, we had to keep doing the PDPs without any movement. The third one there, some started a second cycle depending on, I think, me and April are the, I don't want to call us the oldest too, but we were the ones that would have had to do the full 2. She finished her second one. For me, I had half a year off in year 4 of my second one, and by the 5th year, would have had to pay for 2 of my signers to be replaced because only one was willing to stay on the team unpaid. And actually one just left the portal. So if they chose not to maintain their ability to be a signer, they couldn't sign for you, and then you had to find new ones. But at that point, I mean, word on the street was it's going away. It was cheaper to buy an emergency 1-year license because we all got the lifetime licenses then. It was cheaper to buy the license than it was to pay individual signers, and you needed 3. Now our current pay structure no longer has the 8 credits to move over a lane. Now it's up to, 15? 12? 12 or 15. And that's where looking at those of us that along this process, kind of along with a PDP cycle for several of us, got our masters. And we know from the Alera work that we're already in a group that is significantly behind in pay. So that, in addition to never receiving compensation for 5 to 10 years of the PDP process, is one of our concerns. You can go to the next one, unless you have questions on those. Financial implications. As we discussed, the first round was completed in 2012, second round 2017, and then any time in between those years could have been people completing their first one. When we looked at lost wages, we kind of based that on had we been given that initial lane movement back when it was the 8 credits that kind of aligned with the 6 credits every 5 years. And we actually calculated out at just the 6 credits, we calculated out basically what was the pay per credit when it was 8 and then multiplied it by 6 and then aligned that. And the average kind of rounded wages there, if we would have gotten to move on the years that we finished PDPs, ranged from $6,000 for those that completed 1 to over $11,000, and that is on the oldest, that was on the 2012 pay scale. So that doesn't account for all of the pay raises that occurred since then. You can go to the next one. These are our proposals. You can see the estimated cost in there. That's just kind of us using salary information that we can from DPI, and I don't know, I think we did not have, I think we used last year's pay scale because at the time we started, that's what we had. And these were the options that we came up with. So option 1, we looked at a step advancement. So moving us down a step, we know that the letters do not represent years of service. They used to, they don't, you know. But looking at, there is nothing that says where a PDP fits, so okay, if we moved a step, does that give us a little bit of ground? The first or the second and third bullets, you'll notice, are the same across all 3. That second bullet is for all of us except April, who worked on a second one, but never completed it. So you were in year 4 when they went away. So then for those 4 years, still getting the acknowledgement of the process. And then the $6,000 stipend, that is on the low end. Those were the minimum lost wages for someone who completed 1 PDP in 2012. So we are asking as kind of a token of recognition of those lost wages. We went the low end, realizing that asking for everybody's individual isn't really an option. So those 2 bottom bullet points are the same across the way. Option 2, we looked at a lane instead of a step, considering that really it was professional development, which is what our lanes represent. But when we initially started with that one, we recognized that maybe that's tricky because on our pay scale, it currently says credits, and these weren't credits. However, we don't know what the Alera work is going to end up. Maybe some of that changes, or maybe we say that the work, the collective, we decide that the work was similar to graduate credits, as I know that we've talked a lot about potential for in-house professional development, in-house credit, so maybe that isn't something that's holding us back. Both of those options really similar in overall cost. Again, those aren't the exact numbers. And we kind of feel that both of those show hey, we realized you missed out on some money, here's something we can do for you. Option 3 is a combination of the 2. When looking at the lost wages, but also the potential to make up that money over time, option 3, for those of us who stayed in the district long enough, if you look at this group of people, we are the people who are choosing to stay in the district. This is the option that allows us to make up beyond that minimum amount that was lost. I think we looked at approximately 10 years down the road on that, you would have broken even on the full amount of not having been given the movement initially. And I would just like to say before closing, as a wise woman once said, sometimes $100,000 is okay to lose or invest in your loyal staff. And in closing, kind of the 3 different options there, very similar in the 2 of the 3 bullet points. The third one, the first 2 really say, like, we acknowledge you, we acknowledge the work that you've done, we acknowledge the work that you continue to do. We feel that the third one says, if you're willing to stick with us, we'll put you in a position to make that fully up, kind of make you whole over time. I've said this in a few other meetings, when it comes to recruitment and retention, I feel a lot of our effort has been on, and focus has been on recruitment. This is the group that's looking for the retention to be acknowledged. I think we've all been very patient, sometimes grumpy, but patient. And we feel that it would, in doing something about it this year, ideally before the end of the school year, that it fulfills a promise, if you will, going back 10, 12,
20.
15 years of it's getting tabled, but we'll come back to it. It's getting tabled, but we'll come back to it. And I think one of the big concerns we have is with the Alera work happening, we are also that group that I'm sure you've seen doesn't quite fit with that work. We would love to see this addressed before the Alera work happens, so that we are not the same group that is left behind again. So if this happens, we don't want it to be lost in the Alera work and feel like we will give you one thing but not both things.
Thanks.
Just hold on here. Does anybody have any questions about the presentation or anything that we've looked at here or Jamie's talked about? I don't know if we want to start down here, Pat, or...
No, I don't. No, thank you. No.
Tanya, do you have any questions or comments on any of this? Thoughts?
I don't have a lot of questions. I met with some people in the group, 6 months ago maybe, too, and so I have a little background in it. Yeah, I can imagine how frustrating it was and how hard it is to do all your work, as well as all of these separate plans and everything. And I can totally imagine the climate of the time and things passing and no union and who's advocating and you know, so yeah, I think we agree that something has to happen and now's the time to do that and is a good time. So I don't really have any more questions about it. I look forward to making this right.
Vicki, anything?
Well, I certainly appreciate the background, not knowing or understanding any of this PDP and what it meant, and not realizing, yeah, there was cost still involved, and if you're in the process of going through it, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, it's gonna go away, why then are you investing if you're gonna end up investing twice? So, like I said, I appreciate the background and getting the whole picture on how all of this worked, just because it really did. It put a group of you guys in the middle and just kind of floundering, like you were doing what you were supposed to, but now we've taken it away, and how and what do we do from here? So thank you for all the information and all the work put together here. Ellen?
You know, not really much, obviously I know this, but there's nothing worse than initiatives in education when you're like, oh, yeah, I gotta do it, but then it's gonna be gone. So I understand the frustration. I also understand the fact of what you have to do in a building and then what you have to do at home. When this group of people had to do all that work probably at midnight when their children were, you know, sleeping and all that sort of stuff. So I get that. We have been talking about it for quite some time, and I think we're all on the same page that something needs to get addressed. And so I do appreciate the great, I mean, this is a lot of work that you guys went through. I appreciate that. But I don't really have any questions. You did pretty well.
Katie, anything?
I don't have any questions,
Teachers
but
are great.
I will say the slideshow is very well done.
You were probably in elementary school as they were doing these PTPs, yeah.
More punctuation
Thank
errors.
you, thank you. Read the proposal, read the proposal.
I'm confident the board, this is one of the areas that we wanted to address if the referendum were to pass. This has always been talked about. I'm confident we'll get to something. You know, what that looks like. The needle we gotta thread is how does it work in conjunction with everything else? And that's where we gotta kind of get some numbers crunched.
Oh, we are willing to trade the air conditioning in Michael's office. So
That's the best.
you need to make a hard decision.
How about in your classroom?
I don't have it. So
Oh, yeah, don't ask that one.
I'm not gonna say anything.
Yeah, you guys get it. We have, it's listed in our closed session, so I mean, we'll be talking about it. We have a needle to thread here too. We've always valued making this as right as we possibly can. I hope we can come up with something that you guys are happy with. And maybe, we have to take a look at it. So thank you for the presentation. It was great.
Yeah.
All right, where are we? I gotta get back to my agenda.
We
We're on
have-
second item in here, third item, PHS Tech Ed 5R Manufacturing.
So Kyle Schmidt is going to approach.
Hard act to follow is right.
It is.
Kind of drew the short straw here.
I gotta come back to that. Yeah, so we're talking about the potential of building a shed. So I'll just start off with like throwing out some quick numbers, and I'll try and keep this short because I can talk all night. So this year we've saved like $10,000 to $15,000 worth of wood by milling our own, and we're starting to find different avenues of building different things, selling that wood in different ways. And like tonight, so we had a student come in and he's trying to do siding. He's working on his Eagle Scout project, so he's re-siding business or building. I wasn't paying attention, so I'll pass this along. But this is his prototype, and it just brings us down another avenue for us to generate more funding so we can take care of ourselves, right? And it's pretty good. It's professional grade.
Well, that's what I had kind of heard, the McCord Park building
What's
is
that?
needing, the Merkard Park
Yes.
down at the,
Yeah.
down at the river needs siding and they can't find it anywhere, so.
Yeah, so it's a unique shape, and
Yeah.
Mr. Koenig just happened to have the right stuff from way back when, and it takes about 4 different processes to make that right there, but we can do it. So it turned out that we got very close. So we're saving the money by milling our own wood. This year, we brought back in 1,500, maybe a little bit of low ball. Student siding has brought in about $1,000, so that's 2,500. And then we have our the sheds that we're building next year. 2 of them have already been bought. So people are canceling on sheds out there, and they're seeing the log ones that we're putting the log siding on. They're going, no, I don't want mine anymore. I'm going to order one for next year, make me a log one. So we have one open if anybody wants to buy one. So that's good news. So yeah, like Aiden Anthony, I'm going to call on him too. He's worked and got his Eagle Scout. He made 3 kiosks, which is anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 to Freedom Park. And we donated the materials. They sold some raffle tickets for us, and they got those for basically free. And we have a student that got his Eagle Scout. So good things are happening. So to the shed, if we scroll up to the top there, we're looking at 2 different sizes. We're hopeful for a 40 by 60 or a 40 by 64. You can see the cost of a 40 by 40 there through Cleary is $36,000. I think that's not including labor. So the 40 by 64 through Cleary is $59,000. And then you have Deca Builders. They have their 2 bids that are similar. But with the 2 bids there, Deca Builders includes ventilation for future education. That's just the shell, but we have overhangs on that. And again, the ventilation, so like when we want to put in sprinklers, electrical, water, all those things are included so that we can just add on to it. So Cleary would have to come back with a different bid if they wanted to match those items. KRS Contracting, they came in with a bid this week, and theirs is at $49,000 using Menards materials. So those are, what do you want to say? It's I would say that Deca Builders probably use a little bit more expensive, but Menards is up to code with the same ventilation, same everything that we would need as Deca. So there's that. He did say that that bid didn't include any hole excavation for the posts. So he came back after I asked for that, and it was $3,900 for that. So tack that on there, you're looking at $54,000. Okay. Any questions with the pricing at all?
So just, can you, between the 3 bids, are all 3 comparable? So are the specs of what Cleary and the prices, other than ventilation, is there any difference?
There really isn't.
Okay.
As far as like whether it's the Cleary bid right now, we couldn't build that one at that price to meet our goal. We would build that one their way right now, and we wouldn't actually be able to put the ventilation, electricity, and plumbing into it, so they'd have to come back with a different design. So I can get that at a later date, but right now Deca and KRS are the 2 to fully decide on.
And Deca includes the post holes?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And did I get the amount right for the posts, 3,900?
Yes.
Okay.
So Mike just asked a good question. What's our, how many year investment is this? I mean, we could talk about those numbers. If we're saving $10,000 to $15,000 a year, you know, if Tech Ed is saving that money and we're generating funding, we would like to, you know, whatever it takes to put back into that, Tech Ed's willing to put back into it and pay for this. So if that takes 5 years, 10 years, whatever, if that makes that happen, we'll do that. So.
Can you explain that again? Just say that one more time, Kyle, but
So like if we were to go and let's just say that we build a shed for $50,000, right? This is an investment that the building's gonna be there for the next 30 to 40 years.
Right.
Right, we're gonna continue to teach out of that. It's open to, the whole district. And basically, we were just saying, like, if it takes tech ed to figure out a way to raise the funding through all the cool things we're doing, that we put back into it and we help pay for it until, like, if it takes us 10, 12, 15 years to pay it off, tech ed's willing to do that.
Okay.
So whatever that looks like,
Yep.
it's important to us. We need it. We're bursting at the seams, and basically adding onto the building is much more expensive than, this. So once we get concrete floors in there, the students will put the concrete floors in little by little each year for the next 5 to 10 years until it's finished. So that just helps, our program teach extra items that we haven't been teaching.
Okay.
So, food for thought.
Are you ready for questions, or do you have more to present here?
Not really. I mean,
Okay.
if you want to scroll on the bottom, we can talk positions so that you can kind of wrap your head around where that's going. And then we have some numbers there. We can actually stop there. Let's go up just a little bit. Right there. So excavation, there's a room, somebody might donate the excavation work. Not solidified yet. Electricity, talking with Mike right now, we do have a 2 amp or a 2 breaker 20 amp circuit out there. That's enough to get us going where we could run, a dehumidifier for our kiln, maybe a saw, something of that nature, just to keep us moving out there. So then for the exact location, we'll get to that. But we've been working with city zoning. Matt Wolf came out and we talked about our corners. I showed him what I was thinking, and then he came up with exacts, and we were within 5 feet of each other. So it was like, all right, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And then Mike had asked some questions for me to ask, or Mike Waika had asked me to ask them about the hookups, and the city did come back with, it depends on what the building needs, but he said, if you need a 3/4 inch pipe coming in for water, those are your prices for what it would take to hook the water up to our existing water right there. So it's not too terrible, but it's still an added cost and something that I personally didn't think about. So we can take on those costs right away and do it all at once and get those hard numbers, or we just get the hookups ready and then hook it up at a later time when more funding comes in. So that's probably the biggest, hardest decision to make, I would say, if it were to be approved. But yeah. So electrical's 120 feet away, and that wouldn't be too difficult. I can get any information you guys would need on that or questions later too. So, but as far as the position, yeah, we can scroll down, and here's what I kind of came up with off of Google Maps. So basically, okay, let's show. There we go. So the back parking lot over here by door 5 and 6 behind Tech Ed. This is 50 feet off the road, plus another 35 was just the cushion that I gave ourselves. So we're actually set back about 5 to 10 feet past what the city would want. And Mike Hoyka had mentioned too, just make sure you do give yourself a little cushion, so that way there's no issues if that road were to go in and be extended. That's a big question mark because we don't know if it'll ever be built, right? So that's kind of a tough thing. So we're gonna just give ourselves some breathing room there. So if you scroll down to the next photo, this one is just proof from the city that we've done our research. Hopefully it's still there. Maybe get one more page down.
Yeah, it's down there.
It's way down.
There we go. So you can see that green box there is where the city would approve for it. It just has to be behind that green line, which comes off in the corner of the English department there. Nice call up there for you, the English department. But so it's an easy 45-degree angle. We can find that with no problems and make sure that we're in the clear there as far as positioning. So I am open for questions.
I'm gonna start with Pat.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely start with that.
Well, in fairness, I wasn't here last time we talked about this. Okay. So I understand the dollars associated with the different builders, but then there's some add-on stuff, right? Okay, so I think, and I don't want to, what I would like to see would be kind of just like an all-inclusive like line item, like it's this plus this, right? And if you had, and then help me understand, so you guys got two 20-amp circuits that are available to run out there, but then you're looking for additional electrical connections. So what are you hoping to accomplish with that? What do you want to do?
So within this building, we would like to obviously move our mill from the Woods Lab out there, so we would do our milling and our
Okay.
kiln drying out there. We also want to have a classroom that's in there, so that would be an enclosed classroom, a clean space. Anybody in the district can use that, so at any time or whatever. So we also want to have like extra storage, so there are like, football needs some extra space or cross country needs some extra space. We can work out those details later. If it ends up growing, it's actually a building that we can add on to in 10 years. So we're just kind of trying to find that right size that can help, more than just tech ed.
So just like the water, the two 20-amp circuits helps you get going right now.
Yep.
But you would want its own service at some point.
Yeah.
Okay. And when you say the 20-amp circuits are out there, Mike, is there a conduit stubbed across the road?
We have a small panel out there, and that's what we run for our irrigation system. So we brought the power out there, we brought a couple extra circuits.
Okay.
So they could be used when they go with when they get everything that they want in there, they'll have to run a new service to that. We need to check with Excel, but I think we might be able to come off back by the generator. That transfer might be big enough to run another service over there. You'd have to have another electric, another meter in the socket, obviously. We should be able to run off of that without having to bring something all the way in down Main Street. Obviously, that would be more expensive.
Right.
Running on our own property.
Yeah.
But yeah, to get to where they have a full enclosed classroom if you will out there, or they want to run more items than what they're currently starting out with, yeah, they'll have to bring in their own electrical system.
Okay.
Water line, sometimes stuffing some of the stuff in, just roughing it into the building is fairly inexpensive. So when you do go to the street and open it up, especially if you pour some concrete in the building, you already got, designate a utility road for, okay, we're gonna bring at least water and sewer into here. You might not be hooked up, but at least it's into the building, so you cut under the concrete again. And then they can excavate outside, so back to the street at Pine Street.
Sure. Yeah. So any of the builders that you'd go with, they'd go through the full permitting process?
Yep.
Okay, does this thing have to be sprinklered?
So that's, what do you want to say? We can move in, we would make sure that we cover our butts. At one point, it does need sprinklers once we fully get up and rolling. But I would say as far as housing, storage for the materials, the mill, this just allows us to quickly pull the mill outside, and then we would do our milling outside.
So, and the city's okay with that type of use, occupancy, and they're okay with it not being sprinklered and all that good stuff then, preliminarily anyway?
Yeah, for the time being, yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
because they told them the truth.
Yeah. Okay. This is, I hope you don't think I'm just being I'm not trying to be buzzkill here guy either. One thing I'm worried about for the board is that it's logical where this thing is gonna go. Here we're talking about the old master plan again, right? And we don't know yet. There has been some plans of what should or could ever go back there. This would change that. So I'm just slightly concerned about that. Not that you don't need the space, and I'm not saying we shouldn't try to find it. I'm worried about maybe where it is exactly. And then I'm also, that's that elevation back there. Not that I don't want to play architect here, but that's that elevation. So when you talk excavation too, I mean, you're going to have to bring in a lot of fill, or you're going to have to cut a lot of fill. You're going to have to put in a retaining wall. Have you guys thought about that? You got plans for that? Are you going to handle it all with grading, or it just seems like it seems like it could be a bigger cost than maybe what is being anticipated.
Right. Yeah, we have talked about those items, and that's the thing too, where it's like, you gotta get a professional in there and say, hey, what do we actually have to do to make this happen? So those are questions that are, where are we at? Do we want to move forward with this? How much effort do we put into it? And we've talked retaining walls. So that's where those estimates I don't have. So it's as far as like, do we want to move forward with it? How much effort do I put into it right now?
Yeah.
But
So maybe Mike or Rick, help me with this information discussion today, right? So we're talking about the things that we would need to see, right, to come back and all right, we're not, like, what's the hope for?
So
tonight?
Kyle, I think in transparency, what is some of the time-bound reasons that it was put before? Because you had talked about it earlier, we came back for information discussion. Are there time-bound hopes, or is it something that can be part of, kind of further long-term planning?
I guess in a perfect world, I mean, if we could get a shell up by the time snow flies, if it's got to wait another year, I mean, it's not great, but, we'll do it. It's just one of those things. But yeah, I guess in a perfect world, it'd be nice to have something in by November, so that gives us a space in the winter as well, to keep moving with our 5 manufacturing, right, and the needs there. So if we're making trim and all that, we're kind of, that's where we're bursting at the seams, and we have so much more potential in getting more efficient at doing these things, that it's one trimester covered us for the full year, plus into the first trimester of next year.
Well, so maybe to let the board, I guess just where I'm at is, I mean, would love to see the last investment that you made back there really paid off, right? And so from my perspective, I don't think you're wasting your time. I think this is great. I just would need a more kind of comprehensive kind of planning and just kind of see it all on paper and maybe identify some of the risks and what the costs are. And I don't think to meet your timeline though, to get at least the shell up, I assume that these are post-frame buildings.
Yep.
You should still easily be able to make that time,
right.
I would think. So I hope I don't, that's where I'm at. Maybe I'll let other people go.
And that's, you got a good background, right? So those are the questions that, it's good to have that, so.
Well, he asked a whole bunch of questions I wouldn't have asked, so I'm glad he was here tonight. But I think we did talk about the long-term green space back there. That was one of our questions, is like, if we ever move the track there, the football field, and at least at the time, it didn't seem like it was going to impact that location. And so I think we do want to kind of follow up with that and just make sure, because that would be something, too, for me, that we need to think a little bit more about.
And I would agree with that. I get worried about parking though, right? I mean,
Yep.
But anyway, okay. I already said too much.
Yeah, you did.
I took my time.
Yeah, so I don't really have any more questions, but I think Pat asked all the right questions that great. And for me, it really is just about spacing and making sure that it doesn't impact our long-term planning, which we did talk a little bit about last time, but.
Any questions, Vicki? Nope. Colin?
No, I don't have any questions, I think. I think I hear what you're saying about the space, and it's a fabulous program that reaches a lot of our students. And so I think it's I think if we get some of those questions answered and kind of go through that, I think you've done amazing things so far, and I think you're on the right trajectory, so, yeah.
The only thing, I mean, everybody hit on things. My other angle would be like, how are we going to pay for it, right? So we're not talking about fund $10. At least I wouldn't advocate for that. So this would be something we'd probably want to consider either, paying with money that would be surplus that would go to Fund 46 or Fund 46 somewhere in that range. So it wouldn't impact kind of the earlier discussion on what we were talking about with teachers. That's a different bucket of money. This is something that would be more of an investment in our facilities. So I think from my perspective, I'm curious, we always ask the questions, what's on the horizon? What do we need? What are the big ticket items that we're gonna have to pay for? We just got done putting in a slew of things through the referendum dollars. Is there anything on the docket that's coming up that we are aware of at this point in time that would chew into a bunch of Fund 46 dollars that we know of, Mike, or?
think we're sitting really good, with just a regular maintenance budget, once we get through this referendum dollars. There'll be stuff hitting the windows, probably in the 5 and 10-year marks. Some of those things I'm working on right now to get some estimates.
Okay.
So we can know, we're gonna do Fund 46, do we gotta go to referendum? Hopefully nothing of that. I mean, I'm hoping that we can use our Fund 46 for this. I'm trying to look, what do we have now? What's out there 5 and 10 years? We did, like I say, just got done doing a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, a lot of good things, but there is still some stuff that wasn't in that 18 and 19-year plan. So even though we started that, we'll go on another 5 years.
Right.
In 10 years. So, yeah, most of it hopefully can be handled between our own budget and Fund 46 between them. That's also another discussion to have is, where do we want our Fund 46 to set up as far as capital improvements? What do we want to hold back? Because I know we added all these other tabs for buses and vans and everything else. I think we also need to discuss the finance part of it. What are we seeing for as capital? What's going to be earmarked for van equipment or transportation out of that 546?
Yeah. So I guess what would help sell me is how we're going to pay for it. Where's the money coming from, and does it, what does it impact? Other projects that we might see on the horizon within the next 2 to 3 years.
Rick, this might be a dumb question, but if Kyle raises $5,000 because they sell something, can that money get put into Fund 46, or does that have to live in a specific fund?
There's different ways that we have dealt with it. So you have an assigned level. We talked a little bit about that. So you have fund balance, you have assigned. There are ways where when they generate money, it either goes into Fund 10, or we can put it into an assigned account.
That's what I was wondering too, if we could.
So revenue generated by them
spot
could
to
get
start
used to
saving.
offset cost or pay back an investment from 46.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then, coming back to like a timeline, if board might be interested with certain information in front of us presented, like what are we looking at, like a July timeframe where it's like a drop dead if we want to get the project moving forward to have before the snow falls? How much time does that take? Do we have a guess? Is it June, July, August, somewhere in the middle that we'd have to make a decision?
Well, I think, Kyle, you're going to roll your eyes, but I mean, I think for you to take a stab at kind of backwards kind of poll planning this thing from, hey, you want it covered in, so whatever, pick November 15th, right? You want it done, you want materials in there. Maybe talk to some of these builders and find out, so what's your construction schedule? Let's just work backwards, talk to the city about what's your permitting process, just kind of work backwards and that'll help us get to we need a decision by X. I think that would be a worthwhile.
Yeah, I've actually talked with the city and whatnot in St. Croix, but usually do your paperwork. The paperwork takes about 10 days. If you got a builder that's got something on the schedule, that stuff kind of flies. It might take a few extra days, but yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Okay.
So,
just the only other thing going through my head too is, as we continue to plan about, the buildings that we have and other potential cost avoidances, and what does that mean for Mike, like your shop, or your shop needs or your shop spaces? I mean, I would just hate to make a short-sighted decision here and not be thinking about some of that. Because you would get some economies of scale, if you ever had to do something. And I don't know that we'll have time to get there yet, but I don't know. Any awesome ideas would be a good time to bring those up. Obviously, this thing needs to be really close to your shop space up here, right? Having it at a different site doesn't help you.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so 10 feet off the parking lot, it's kind of over there.
Okay.
What is the likelihood of, the football field, baseball field, all that stuff going in? That's kind of the question that I can't, no matter who I talk to, I can't get a real good question on that one either. in like Lakeman land too, whether that sells or not.
That's all part of that long-term,
Yeah.
long-range planning, and that has to resume. So,
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to talk, so the track is not, we can't use it for meets and stuff like that. So for me, it's pretty important that we consider another spot for our, for it. And that's kind of our only spot. And so I think that we just have to make sure, like, and map it out, like that if we did move this there or build this space, that we still have the right space for something that, it might not be for another 5 to 10 years, but it's something I think that eventually we need to do something about.
And just, if I could interject, because Matt's here, Matt has been sitting in on the meetings.
Yeah.
But when we have plotted out, even when you built this school, there were potentials of a football and track, and then we had 2 sites, so some of it has already been kind of platted. From your perspective, parking would be something to consider, but for an actual track or a future football, where's the location likely to be?
Not where the shed would go.
Okay.
The shed would not impact any layouts for future athletic activity spaces. Then I think, now, would that be a pivot point down the road? Yes, but I think then you would cross that bridge. But right now, currently, where it would go would not impact the shed.
I think we have 2, maybe 3 locations that we've kind of projected. I do think the parking would be something that, because it's already flat compared to some of the other terrain, but if parking's the only piece, we might be able to figure that out.
Yeah, I would want to see parking lots standing in the way. I think we can be creative with parking.
Well, and that's what I was saying, really, I mean, with the building, how many parking spots would that actually be? I mean, it's a decent-sized building, but when it comes to parking spots, what does that actually impact?
Well, I was thinking more parking for an eventual
Football.
football or track
No,
facility
that's what I
up there.
mean, for an event, like how many spots
Yeah.
would you?
I mean, all good questions that we don't have the answer to right now.
If you want to support an event, though.
Yeah.
So,
People can walk a little.
all right. Is that, are we good on this one? I mean,
If he's good,
Yeah, so.
Do you need anything else?
do you have what you need?
I'll come back with a more itemized list, is what you guys are asking for, and maybe more definite timeline.
Yeah.
So I mean, you guys have asked questions and gotten closer to getting to that point.
yeah.
And Kyle, I think it would, although you're looking for possibilities of like site work or excavation, either in partnership or gifted, I think it'd be good to put a price value on, just in case it doesn't come through, that we know what the cost.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Kyle.
All right. We're gonna move on to item D, update on transition readiness grant funds, student services.
Yeah, so Sandy Strand, Student Services, take it away.
Hello, members of the board, Dr. Spikuza. This time last year, actually at our staff appreciation luncheon, we found out that we received a transition readiness grant from the Department of Public Instruction, and that grant was intended to help support a student participate in Project Search at River Falls Hospital, to also pay for transportation for that student to get to and from. It was also intended for our high school transition teacher and our middle school program teacher to attend the Wisconsin Transition Conference, and also myself, and then for us to start forward planning about what we wanted our essentially grade 9 through 21 programming to look like for students with more significant disabilities. So the Transition Readiness Grant is designed to support Wisconsin students with disabilities to successfully complete transition to competitive work and post-secondary education environments after high school. There's a federal indicator that we are rated on every year. We have to call graduates 1 year out from graduating and find out if they are in any type of competitive employment or educational programming. Why am I presenting to you tonight? Because in the grant application, I indicated that we would present at the board meeting in the spring of 2025 a review of our students' participation in Project Search, as well as a presentation of our program review and a 3-year plan for improving transition programming for students in Prescott School District. First and foremost, I want to just recognize Carly Erickson and Helena Yanish. Carly is our teacher currently at Prescott Middle School, and Helena is our teacher at Prescott High School, who have been working primarily, wow.
Yeah, it's really nice.
It's the thunder. Who've been working primarily with this population of students, and they have been my kind of, we've been the trio that's been planning and putting our heads together around this for the year. So if we could go on to the next slide. We did meet earlier in the year. This is very small. I don't intend for you to be able to read it. But much like Michael did with the teacher group, we used the guiding change process to kind of analyze what we're currently doing for all secondary students with IEPs and what really is missing or what is needed. The things that were identified as kind of our reality is staffing challenges, obviously. Not enough staff for academic support in terms of paraprofessionals. People are concerned about staffing specifically for our high needs programs. We currently do some pull-out English classes and math classes for our high school students who maybe are not at grade level academically. We also do a lot of push-in for math classes, intensified algebra, those kinds of things. So anyway, we kind of analyzed what our current reality is. We talked about the non-negotiables, the unacceptable means, which, we're not going to build a whole new building somewhere in Prescott for transition. We're not going to not go into the community. We're not going to not do this. And then we kind of talked about what could happen, what could we envision. We talked about wanting to expand our community options, which would mean needing to have reliable transportation throughout the week. We talked about improving our opportunities for pre-vocational work, in-house assessment for work, vocational opportunities for students, which right now Helena does an excellent job of partnering with the community and bringing students out for different opportunities. But we're really limited in our geographical location. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Project Search. While it's a great program, it's very narrow in terms of its scope for the type of students that it serves. One of the other things that we talked about was just the staffing ratio that we felt like we needed in the high needs program. And actually at this meeting earlier in the spring, we talked about consolidating based on our current population of students K through 12, consolidating our 6th through 12th grade programming for high needs students, because right now we currently have 0 students. That we have 2 students moving from 8th grade to 9th grade this coming year, and we have 0 students that are moving into the middle school that require that kind of high needs programming for students with like autism or intellectual disabilities, like significant intellectual disabilities. So next slide, please. So for this year, we participated in Project Search. We did have 1 student participate in Project Search. That student ended up, per the recommendation of the staff at Project Search, ended up only participating half-time in Project Search. And that was for a variety of reasons, partly because Project Search is at the River Falls Hospital, so it's a very quiet environment. And this student likes to vocalize, not terrible, like it's wonderful, but likes to talk. They're a talker, and that was startling to some people. And so what we ended up doing is we ended up pulling back and that student participates half days at Project Search, and then we created a combination vocational opportunity at Prescott Middle School. I worked collaboratively with Mike Hoyka, Bob Feiereisen in the building, and Nicole Lenzner, and the nutrition services staff at the middle school, and the student does custodial and nutrition services work starting with the 6th and 7th grade lunch, and then they do like custodial for the remainder of the day. And they have absolutely excelled and are pretty much independent, with the exception of somebody has to hold the door so they don't touch the door after they wash their hands. So that's really exciting. It also kind of opens up our eyes of, we have such capacity here in district. We did purchase the transition planning inventory, which is a more structured tool to assess for transition, and are looking to be a little bit more structured on how we do that moving forward. We did tour another transition program just this week over in South Washington County. We toured their Pathways program, which they serve students really similar to the students that we currently have in our programming here. And these guys got to see a larger scale operation, but their supervisor is phenomenal and very knowledgeable. The three of us participated in the transition conference down in the Dells, and then we did create a 3-year plan for program development and enhancement. Our goal for next year and beyond is to, as appropriate, participate in Project Search, but be far more selective about the students that we do refer. It's an expensive program. It costs nearly $20,000 just for one student to participate. We'd like to consider purchasing a vehicle for transition-related transportation, and we would like to begin financial planning for a PAYS lab, and I'll tell you what that means in a second. All right, so our program structure currently that we've kind of just designed that we'd like to move forward with is, obviously all of our programming for our students in these programs are guided by the IEP. So they all have a program of services and supports that are directed by their IEP teams. In 6th through 11th grade, those students are still participating in statewide testing. They should be still receiving as typical of a high school experience, middle school experience as possible. So they would still be receiving standards-based instruction in their core content areas aligned with the alternate standards. They would also have periodic access to community activities via field trips. We would want them at that age to be participating actively in vocational exploration and then starting to participate in building level job activities. Once a student really hits that 12th grade year, if we know that they're going to continue on with us beyond 12th grade, then we want to take our approach more functional. So we want the academics to be more guided in, if it's money math, it's not just money math, it's how can I count out change to somebody using a cash register, or independent living skills instruction, teaching a student how to maybe do food prep in more of a commercial kind of kitchen, opportunity for job trials, youth apprenticeship. We've had a number of students access our youth apprenticeship program, so we collaborate with other departments and our guidance staff. Project Search is certainly a part of that, but the PAYS lab is something that we really would like to look at adopting. It's something that they've had in other districts that I've been in. It's a comprehensive program that I'll talk about in a second. And then those other two, community-based job activities, building level district job activities, and then regularly scheduled community outings. So next slide, please. So our 3-year vision is, so this first year is pretty much everything I already summarized. And then beginning the budgeting or funding process for a PAYS lab. I've already applied for a Prescott Foundation grant. We do have potential for some private donors, and then we're building our budget moving forward for next year to see what we can set aside in our federal flow-through dollars, but then also we'll begin to have some conversations with teaching and learning about supporting that program.
And Sandy, can you just, for us to acquire a PAYS lab, is there an initial cost, and then what is the ongoing upkeep?
Yep. I was going to talk about that when I get to defining it. So the PAYS actually stands for, and I'm gonna mutilate it. It's Performance Assessment Evaluation System or something like that. But it's a system of work. There are over 300 different types of jobs that students can participate in across 5 career areas. And on another slide, let me see here if I've got it. Those 5 career areas include business and marketing, computer technology, processing and production, consumer and service industries, and then construction or industrial. So feasibly, we could work with a student who maybe isn't ready to be out in the community, and they could be doing job trials, and we could be collecting data on their stamina, on their accuracy, on just their expressed and manifested interests in those areas, and be much more focused on whether or not we're able to bring them out into the community for an actual job. And it's something we can show to prospective employers. So for next year, so the PAYS lab itself costs about $38,000. That is for all of the equipment, and that includes the setup. And when you purchase the PAYS lab, Heidi Johnson is a regional rep. She works with all of the districts around this area in Wisconsin and Minnesota. She was at the conference that we were at. She actually comes, her people come, they physically set everything up. They train all of the staff on all of the equipment, on all of the jobs, on all of the computer programs, so that we can accurately and appropriately use the program. So yes, it's a huge cost, but then I look at if I'm sending one kid to Project Search, and it's one industry that they're getting exposed to, and that's costing $20,000, I think we might get more bang for our buck in a transition program if we were able to give kids a broader range of opportunities and experiences. So in year 2, we're looking at consolidating the programming for a couple of reasons. Not only is the population kind of shifting a little bit, but also we've had staffing difficulties. Both at the middle school and the high school in those programs. It's difficult to find and retain paraprofessional staffing. This way, we're consolidating teacher FTE. Both teachers would be in one spot, so they would be able to support one another in building this program. And we would be then consolidating the staffing so that we're aiming for a 2-to-1 or a 3-to-1 ratio in that program. And then obviously I talked about transportation, and then we talked about comprehensive transition assessment and programming training for secondary staff, including our related services and our psychological staff. And then the goal would be that in that 3rd year, we would be able to acquire that PAYS lab. It would be set up in the summer. We'd get the training. We would advertise to neighboring districts about PAYS. We could engage possibly in a collaborative service agreement with neighboring districts if they wanted their students to come participate on a daily basis. It's like a 2-hour kind of time slot that they could come. We could charge a fee, and it could possibly be a revenue generator for us. I want to continue our transition assessment training. I think we can be far more robust than we have been, and then continue our standards-based academics through grade 11, which right now I have to say that both Carly and Helena have done an exceptional job with teaching this population of students. All right, next slide. Okay, so the difference between Project Search and PAYS. Project Search was created back in the 90s, 1996, at Cincinnati Children's Hospital. So the hospital setting is kind of the original Project Search, right? There's one at Medtronic, there's one at hospitals all over the Twin Cities. The idea is that it is a work program. It was intended to be for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities, to prepare them for entry-level positions in a hospital. So some of you are educators. You might be able to reflect and identify, on one hand, the number of students with intellectual and developmental disabilities, of which autism is part of, who are quiet, and conform and can very easily work in that kind of quiet environment. It has not been friendly to our students here in Prescott. I know Mark really struggled getting students placed at Project Search when he was the director here, and I think it's for that reason that he was so willing to work with us this year with our student and be flexible and do something kind of outside the box. But it hasn't proven to be super helpful for our students with more significant disabilities that may have some behaviors that might include vocalizations or any type of physicality. So if we go to the next slide. So like I said, for the district, Project Search is cost prohibitive. It's difficult to get our students selected. We do have to transport the student to and from the site. We also maintain the IEP. That's just a Wisconsin thing. And for the students, they have to be able to function at a 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 ratio at all times. So if they need individualized support or attention, they generally frown on that, and that was one of the reasons why our student initially was not being successful. They must demonstrate a quiet demeanor and be mostly compliant and must be nearly employment ready. Next slide. So PACE, practical, that's performance, practical assessment exploration system, is a research-based assessment system identifying aptitude for community-based employment, functional skills, interests, and work behavior, strengths and barriers to success. And we're thinking of PACE because we want to be able to expand that transition experience to all students with disabilities, not just our kids with the most significant disabilities. It's in-house, so it's kind of sheltered, so we're able to do that. But we've got so many kids at Prescott High School that would probably benefit from doing some job trials with this, that maybe have mild disabilities, but they just don't know, they haven't thought about what they want to do for the rest of their lives. Again, they clock in and clock out, so it's like going to work. The teacher or the staff in there are referred to as the employer or the supervisor. The students are the employees, and it's just an excellent way to look at transitioning to work and independent life, and it's for all students, right? In special education, that is. So the little video, you don't have to go back, but there's a little video camera clip on that last slide. If you guys have access to this, there's a link on that, and if you just fast forward to 3:16, that gives you a down and dirty kind of video clip of what it looks like. So moving forward, this is kind of what it looks like. It's kind of color-coded and stuff, but then all the jobs are inside those boxes. We can go on to the next slide. So moving forward, this is what we're looking at. We're looking at the consolidated program focused on functional academics, life skills, community engagement, vocational and career exploration, and recreation and leisure. We want opportunity for grade level participation. So if we get a student who is middle school aged and they need to access this program, we are prepared to then bring them back to the middle school for their peer contact so they can participate in grade level activities such as Phi Ed or specials or lunch or what have you. Another reason that a vehicle would be very beneficial. Anyway, the next one, why consolidate? Again, I mentioned the lack of high needs students at the intermediate and middle levels for the next probably 3 years at least. We can consolidate the staffing to enhance learning opportunities. It allows a stronger focus on transition activities with one teacher while the other teacher continues a high quality standards-based program based on academics as required by law. Right now, these are all the partners that we have worked with courtesy of Ms. Yanish and her team, Shar Malyug. They partner with the American Legion. They partner with the food pantry. We run the entire backpack program out of a room upstairs. It's like a grocery store when you walk in there. The Kinnickinnick River Land Trust, Twisted Oak, Patax, Hudson 12 Cinema, Bridge, Project Search, Northwoods Technical College. So we're already doing so much. It takes staff to make it happen. happen, and it takes focus. So we're out there, we're working hard. We just need to get a little bit more structure around the program. And the next slide. These are just some pictures of our kids doing some of the things that that I talked about. The two on the left-hand side, that was when they toured Project Search earlier this year, or was it last year? It was this year, earlier this year. And so they're doing a stickering project. That's one of the jobs there. And then at American Legion, they're folding the boxes for the lunches. And then that is our custodial support at the middle school. He's actually breaking down the salad bars in the cafeteria, which requires him to do the food safe protocol for hand washing and donning gloves, and he does all of it very successfully. One day I had a sub, and I spent my whole time chasing him around because he knew his schedule and I didn't, and I was useless. So just really proud of the work that we've done. I think we've got a vision. I know it's something that Mark wanted to do. When he was here, he mentioned that he really wanted to build the transition program, and I think we're well on our way. We've got a vision. So, thank you.
Thank you, Sandy.
Thanks, Sandy.
Any questions?
Any questions, Tanya? You have any questions, comments?
Well, is this kind of, are you looking, so last year you had the transition readiness grant? Like $29,000 or something like that. Is that something that you can reapply for this year to help support that?
We already have.
Okay.
Problem is that you cannot use the transition readiness grant to pay for a PAYS lab.
Oh.
So they put stipulations around it, just like I can't use transition readiness grant dollars to pay for a job coach.
Okay.
So we've had to pay staff to job coach.
Sure.
But we can't use transition readiness grant funds. I can use those funds to pay the actual student, which we are planning, because we're not paying for the full Project Search fee. I'm using some of the balance of those dollars to pay the student actually for doing the work that he did.
Great. And obviously we know the PAYS lab together, and it is a really great, it's more of an assessment of kids' skills and their readiness and stuff, and kids generally really like it. Like they're actually using tools and hammers and creating stuff, and then along the way they're also being assessed. So I would be excited for it to come here, and I mean, it's beneficial for our kids that have higher needs, but it really would be great for a lot of our students that just are kind of getting into wanting to do trades, and they just don't know what they're able to do skill-wise. So, great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, that was a great presentation. I don't have any questions other than what Tanya asked. Nothing right now. It would be wonderful. I agree, and I guess I just keep going back to. Let me ask you a question. So the PAYS lab, right now, does the vision include reimagining some existing space?
Well, so we are very rich with space here in this building. The high needs program has how many classrooms are up there, guys? It's like there's essentially 4 classrooms and like a conference room, and so the PAYS lab would fit right into one of those spaces. We would probably continue to run maybe even in the room that we're doing the backpack program, because you can run one at a time when the other thing's not running. And then we're using the other spaces for, like, we're looking at a sensory space, we're looking at using the different spaces for different types of academics, and then there's a functional living skills space, so a full kitchen that they also use.
Okay.
So it's wonderful. We just really want to get a strong structure and a schedule around it, which these ladies have already been starting to plan their course catalog and kind of get that structure in place for what to expect at 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade, and beyond.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah.
Vicki?
Well, it sounds like you've kind of rolled everything together, some cost savings and some possible revenue opportunities, so that's nice to see. Is there anyone there in our area that has a PAYS lab? What's
Just South Washington County has one, but it's currently boxed up because they are building a new program, a new space for their transition program. And ultimately, a PAYS lab it should be at the high school level. It shouldn't be at an 18 to 21 level per se, because we should be doing a lot of this exploration when kids are in 11th and 12th grade. And so that principal supervisor is pushing for it to go back down to one of the high schools. But we kind of have both, so it works.
So are you saying that PAYS lab's not in a plan right now and somebody should reach out if they want it?
I think she wants it.
Oh.
I just think she has it in storage right now, but you can certainly reach out and ask if you can get it at a discount.
I hear you're not using it.
Theater programs, sure.
Right? I know, right?
But if anybody does ever want to go see it, that I assume that you looked at that kind of stuff and it
Yes.
is really cool, so.
And I think Hudson might have a PAYS lab, but I don't know. I could call Heidi and find out, but yeah, she's the person.
I get a question on the 38,000, that's a big price tag. Does that training include in that 38,000? And then is that continuing training? Like, is it just like 1 year training, or do they keep coming out and
They would come out
you?
as often as we would need them to support us getting off and running.
Okay.
And then if we needed, like if all of a sudden we just had a huge turnover of staff, we'd probably have to pay a fee to have them come back out again and train again.
And this PAYS labs, because I don't work with this, and I was actually part of that team that worked with that population. So, is this? You said it's appropriate for that high school. Is it appropriate for the 6 to 8 age
Yes.
group? Okay.
Yeah, and honestly, so kids who are 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, they're still going to be doing more like of their core academics in special education, right? They're going to get ELA and math and whatever, so they're not going to have as much flexibility and time as a high schooler would who is doing career exploration and at that age.
Sure.
But certainly you can start transition programming activities as early as the IEP team wants. So I would say 8th grade would probably be reasonable if a kid wants to dip their toes in.
Okay. My last question would be, you mentioned a van.
I included that in my in my TRG grant.
I'm wondering why, because we have, like, this would be during the day, right? You would do this during the day. Do we currently have a van or transportation that they could use
We
within
just
our
bought a
fleet?
van,
Yeah.
right? And I think, was it for some sports and activities, but it's maybe a possibility that we shared, I don't know.
So we have the Suburban, we have that, the thing on lease with the local dealership. That is often used by sports, right? That was kind of the intention behind that. We do have a few vehicles that are in the garage. Not all of them are incredibly, I would not recommend that we necessarily transport. There's a Suburban in there that's quite old and in there, it just doesn't have the capacity. We're looking at like an 8-passenger van with the potential of a wheelchair lift. But I'm not even going down that road for planning until I know whether or not we get the grant money. And then I have to request special permission from DPI because you can't purchase a vehicle without permission.
All right, thanks, Sandy.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Next one is item E, WIA's new NIL approval. Everybody's favorite topic, the NIL in high school sports.
Big money, big money. Well, thanks for having me. I will be brief here. A lot of this I know you talked about last year. The WIA brought it to vote. It did fail last year. So in terms of NIL, for name, image, likeness, basically what I'm coming to tell you is that we will have for our activities code, we will be adding some languages for clarity with how to implement it with guidelines and whatnot. But it did pass last month of the annual meeting for the WIA, so it's now in place. And basically, athletes can now profit from their name, their image, their likeness. There's still many regulations, though. You cannot wear your school jersey. You cannot represent that. You can't say things like, hey, when I play for the Prescott Cardinals. You can't have pictures on school grounds, things of that nature. So there's still a lot of guidelines. And if you wanted to be a business that approached a student athlete with an NIL opportunity, There's a lot of logistics to navigate there. You cannot be an alumni, you cannot be a current booster or a sponsor. So there's still a lot of hurdles that are going to need to take place for it to happen. So it's not necessarily going to be like the NCAA. It's much more scaled down in that approach. But our athletes now are able to profit, like I said, from their name, their image, their likeness there. What we're using is the Middle Border Conference. We partnered, and the WA also, Influential Athlete. It is a company that basically, this is what they do. They specialize in NIL. So they're going to give a lot of oversight, and they have already, with videos, links, question and answers. There's a webinar next week. It's going to be a live stream that families, that athletes can join in to get an overview. Like I said, what are the guidelines? Where are where are the rails? What can we and can't we do with that? Basically, I would look at them. We are paying a fee to have them as a conference. Basically, I would consider it like having an attorney on retainer. So we get a question. We have, is this a violation? We bounce it off them. They can give us clearance with that, what to look at with that. The big thing is educating our families, our athletes, our coaches, and then businesses also for understanding. So everyone wants to play by the rules. WA is going to help us with that. Influential Athletes going to help us with that. But educating people what we can, what we can't do there. So communication is going to be huge with that. Getting out information, making sure everyone understands what are the do's, what are the don'ts. And there's going to be some gray area. I think this being brand new across the entire state, there's going to be times that people stub their toes. There's going to be, verbiage added, there's going to be asterisks, there's going to be language added as we go throughout the state. So it's going to be interesting as we go about it. That being said, we expect smooth sailing. We're going to navigate as we go. It's a new endeavor for everyone involved. But like I said, from a board standpoint, the biggest thing would be we're going to be adding language to our code and just making sure that our athletes, our families, people understand what it is, what it entails, and then how we follow our guidelines and what we do. If there is a violation, then the WA will say, hey, here's what needs to happen, and there's consequences for that. But my hope is by educating people, by making things available for them, websites, links, you name it there, like I said, webinars, that people can understand the do's and don'ts and be proactive instead of reactive with our approach there.
And Matt, you've already been pretty proactive with our coaches, right?
Yeah, talking with our coaches about it, and they understand. And that's the biggest thing, like, if we're going to get approached, come ask. We don't want this to be after the fact. Let's not hide anything. And then beg for forgiveness. Let's ask for permission and move forward with that. The one thing in terms of what's interesting, the WA said you don't have to have school approval to do it. But most schools we talked about, as a conference we met today, we're going to ask our kids just to be upfront with us. It's a partnership, and the biggest part is for the kids may understand, but the businesses might not. And they don't know what they don't know. So, I'm not going to say anything would be under the table, but everyone just being transparent with their approaches, I think, will help everyone to get it rolling. And then if we have, we'll call it a hurdle, we can navigate that hurdle together.
Well, Matt and I talked a little bit about this, and I think for smaller districts, there'll be more hurdles because there are many local individuals who are alumni that are business people, and then you get this conflict of interest. It also, I appreciate the educational piece and informing, because violations at WIA, maybe it impacts your high school career for whatever sanction they put in, but if they are looking to go to the second level, the NCAA may have a different view as well. So we're trying to make sure that we're not only taking care of students at the high school level, but anybody that's looking beyond, that we're also trying to navigate that as well.
I guess any questions on that part of it, the NIL?
Anybody have any questions here on NIL? No.
I had a quick question, and it's just procedure for us, but the last time we had a presentation on this, and I think it didn't pass, if I recall, or it was held off or something, it said that districts could choose to accept it or not allow NIL, and I was wondering if that's still a thing. And we were advised last time, Andrew advised, you don't want to block it because people will open enroll and possibly go someplace else. But I was wondering procedurally, do we have to accept it? Do we have to do anything formally besides policy in order to?
It would be following policy,
just
making sure everything.
Make sure we have it in policy.
It checks with the guidelines.
Yeah.
Where I would pause is if we block something, like you said, a student saying, okay, I'm going to go up the road where this is approved. Or like we talked about earlier, students not having to tell us. then
Yeah.
that's where we're gonna get the lack of transparency,
Yeah.
the handshake deals under the table.
Yeah.
I think everyone being transparent, being upfront, that's gonna lead to it being a healthy relationship with all involved.
And then the education piece, because kind of the other concern, and I think Rick, you were bringing it up too, is like being in a small town, you can see where like this could go really easily for some of our kids and stuff like that with some of our businesses. But the risk is really, the families bear the risk here and the students bear the risk of businesses not going through the proper channels. And so anyways, when it comes to the education, is there going to be some specific education to businesses
Yes.
around town and stuff like that?
Yep.
Okay.
It'll be, kind of what we're looking to do and conversations on that. So
Yeah.
it'll be, here are the guidelines, here's
Yeah.
your yes, no, check this box, what it looks like.
Yeah.
Do's, don'ts per
Yeah.
se. And then as we go, hey, is there wiggle room here? Let's look into it. Nope, we can't do this, but we can navigate this and go this path.
Yeah. Great. I mean, I think it's exciting for kids, and it's exciting, but also there's a lot of risks too. We don't want them to be taken advantage of and stuff
Exactly.
either. So, thanks.
Good to go? All right, the other big thing here at the WA annual meeting that passed, unlimited summer coaching contact. So basically, in a nutshell, before there was rules and restrictions during the summer, what coaches could and couldn't do. A lot of times it was limited to 5 days, depending on the sport and the contact. But it passed now here in April, so it's going to be implemented here as we hit June 1st. So it's unlimited, and as you can see up on the slide there, it is open June 1st to June 30th. It closes up, they call it a dead week, July 1 through the 6th. It reopens up, then July 7th through the 31st. Football has to stop, a hard stop for them would be the 26th. So that's basically the unlimited aspect has to fall within that category there. You're going to have spring sports that are going to go past June 1st. So that's more local governance. So here with our coaches, we're going to be very respectful of our spring sports and our playoffs moving forward with that and not stepping on their toes. Some might say, well, that's limiting opportunities for other sports. Those kids are in season. That's ultimately what we're looking to accomplish, our goals, and do those things. We got to be respectful of that. And with our staffs, our coaches, we have a good group here. That's not going to be an issue in terms of that. Why do I know that? Our coaches have always been fantastic. We share athletes. We know we got to have multi-sport involvement. We got to honor their time. And it's not just from a physical standpoint, mental health, just people being people. We got fishing to do. We got cabins to visit. That stuff's important also. You could see a slight uptick now that it is unlimited. You might have some coaches that might say, hey, we're going to add a day here and add a day there. And those aren't days that weren't already implemented before. But the term I used is a lot of times they were farmed out before. Our football team, for example, they used to, Park High School, they ran the same defense that we ran here at Prescott, so we would basically flop for 2 days. Prescott coaches would go work with the Park athletes, Park coaches would come over here and work with the Prescott athletes. Now what it'll be is instead of having to do that, it would just be Prescott coaches coaching our own athletes. So it's not necessarily adding days. Same thing like with 7-on-7 leagues, our coaches could not coach in those before. Now they're going to be able to coach, and what does that lead to? A safer environment and more instruction, which is going to help us. Like boys basketball league, for example, I know Coach Johnson usually doesn't go over to Stillwater and coach in the league. They're already doing it. Now if Nick wanted to head over on a night and coach, he can do that. That's a choice now that he has without having to use one of his 5 contact days. So it's not necessarily adding more days, it's just who can be there doing the things that we want, that we trust to do.
You can see all of us that have kids in sports up here thinking, no, it's adding more days. All of us. You should see our faces. And I get it, but yeah.
I don't think it will be. I think if you talk to our coaches, there's a calendar that they're going to have, and they're going to look at, and it's going to be an eye-opener when they look at it and go, okay, so we have, for example, we had a school in our conference, and I don't know if they're still going to do this, but when it first came out, they said, okay, Legion Baseball is going to have 1 day to play their games, basketball is going to take 2 days, and football is going to take 2 days. You look at that, you want to tell a kid that maybe their third sport is football, they're not playing football anymore. They want to go to the cabin. They want to go to the lake. So I think you will ultimately be surprised, because our coaches want to go to the lake too. They want to go to the cabin. They want to win. They want to be around the kids. But they also know that it's not, our coaches really understand the physical health side of things, the mental health side of things, and there is overdoing it. And, full transparency, I could see down the road, a summer or two from now, I think what's gonna happen ultimately, which I don't want to, but I could see this happening, there's gonna be districts that maybe look and overdo it a little bit,
And we have to compete.
and then you gotta keep up with the Joneses,
I mean,
because
that's obviously what's gonna happen.
then our coaches are hearing, hey, I'll say, for example, Osceola football put in an extra 20 days this summer, and they overachieved, they're doing X, Y, Z, and why aren't we doing that? And then Coach Hanson having to say, you know what, where am I gonna thread that needle? Is more always better? What works best for us? So that's the thing with that aspect, that, like I said, our coaches have always done a great job, and talking with our coaches right now, they don't expect to do more. It's not gonna be an overhaul. They're, like I said, maybe a day here or there, but ultimately it's, it's sharing those kids. We want to encourage multi-involvement. That's one thing we're gonna do. And ultimately, if we have, if it's getting abused, then that's my position to have some hard conversations with coaches and what we're ultimately doing, what our end goal is. A big part of this, like I said, with the calendar, communication is gonna be key. We don't want to overwhelm families. We've got to take the health of our student athletes. Reminder, this stuff is voluntary. It's encouraged. But what makes Prescott High School special is our ability to have multi-involvement students. And it's not just athletics, it's our kids that are involved in a plethora of activities, whether it's the choir, musical, you name it, they're doing a lot of different things. And that's something our coaches also understand, and we got to value as we move forward. From an aspect of compensation, we have to pay the coaches more for their time. What we're looking to do is run as many of our camps that we already run and we operate, contact days you could call them, through summer school. I talked with Sarah Dusick on some of the guidelines. She's going to meet with our coaches on what they need to do, what needs to happen. We're then able to take those kids that attend, do those things. We can use those hours then towards summer school. We can pay the teachers through our summer school process with that. So it boosts summer school numbers, which helps our FTE there, and then we can compensate coaches along with that too. So you look at that from that vision as a win-win. So yeah, that's another new aspect from the WA that passed here at the annual meeting, I guess, in terms of updates with that. Any questions in that regard?
Anyone have any questions on this? I could go on.
I would like to see that we have something in handbooks about this, because if we have kids playing 3 sports and every coach adds 4 days throughout the summer, you can see how this gets busy. And so I just want to make sure that, and I don't know, I'm not saying like qualifications or requirements, but I do think we should somehow address it in our handbook, just to address, and I don't know if we need parameters around it, that's up to you, but I just think it should be addressed,
It'll be addressed, yeah. I don't know parameters wise.
Right,
It is unlimited, hence the WAA, so we have to trust people, I think.
Yeah.
And then I think we navigate if, much like
Yes.
if your dog stays in your yard, do you really need a fence? Once Fido kind of leaves, then you got to address that issue.
And I think, absolutely, we have phenomenal coaches, but we, our coaches change too over time, and you're right, like, as soon as that competition changes next door, it's gonna change here, just like it does when reading increases scores someplace, the same kind of thing happens. And so I do wanna protect our kids, and I do wanna just say that there is a difference when your head coach is potentially going to the Sunday scrimmages versus somebody else that's not part of that program necessarily. So whether or not it's changing the opportunities that are there for kids, but that pressure of being there has definitely changed, which is fine. I know I have athletes, they're expected to be there even though it doesn't say it, but I'm just saying, this is a big change, I think, actually. So, but we have great coaches and I do trust them.
Anybody else?
You're happy you're done. He's
I'm
smiling, that's why.
Let's move on, please, Matt. Teaching and learning update.
Matt, thank you. It is going to be definitely a game changer.
Who came up with that idea?
I don't know, maybe getting some Stockholm calls.
Minnesota.
Yeah, probably.
Did Minnesota? Oh,
You guys
no.
caught it?
See, we're already keeping up.
There you go.
All right, well, follow that up with everyone's second favorite thing to talk about, sex ed.
What?
So, our Human Growth and Development Advisory Committee met this spring, and I'm coming to the board tonight to discuss the input that ultimately was the work of this advisory committee. So the board we had 19 people that were interested individuals that came forward that want to be part of the committee. As a board, you elected them to this committee. We met 3 times over the last couple of months here. Our first time that we met, we had 16 of the attendees were able to attend. And then we had a day of curriculum clarifications and then a day of input results and additional clarifications. So it was a 3-day process, but there was a lot of work that went on in between the 3, and you'll see why. But I'm really here today because we're at the end of that process, is to provide the board with input and sort of some of the things that we learned as a faculty and things that we could improve on that parents are looking for that maybe necessarily they didn't have that voice, or this wasn't maybe brought forward in such a way that they felt like they could share that with us. So there were some very positive things that came out of this process. So Rick, if you go to the next one. So the work itself was the policy. Day 1, we spent a lot of time on policy. Because now that the school board has decided we will teach human growth and development, there then are policies and statutes of things that you must teach. And that's what we spent the entire first day on, is what are the things that we are now being told we have to teach within our curriculum. I think some people on the advisory were surprised of the things we must now cover. Versus things that can we remove things and take things out. So that was mostly the first day. Then what we did is we actually had, and I know the board, you have this, there was 21 different things in that policy, or in the state statute, which again is part of our policy, of things that we must teach or stipulations. And even within those 21, there were multiple on some of them. So we're probably talking about 40 different topics we must cover. So we laid that out. Our teachers developed this new curriculum, or with a new resource, developed the curriculum. We provided links to those slideshows. We did not provide every activity that we did in class. We didn't provide quizzes or the tests that went along with them, but it was more of the general, this is what we're presenting. Part of it was educating our families on, they're not educators, so when you look at a slideshow, what am I really looking at here? What's really the conversation? How does a lesson actually go? And we had a lot of great conversations about that of, how are we pairing kids? This is uncomfortable for some children. What do we do if they're uncomfortable? How do we know they're going to work well together? Things like that. And one of the things that the teachers kept talking about is that this is always the last unit of the course, because we have done building thinking classroom tasks where we have kids working together and we know who can or maybe cannot work together. So out of these 40 or so different topics, they're covered, nearly every single one of them is covered in grades 7, 8, 6, 7, 8, and 9. There also are some of the topics that are covered in grades 5 when we start with our growing up groups. So we looked at all those, and then looking just for feedback, and I threw it into AI and said, give me some feedback on this feedback. And some of that we looked at, and there were different categories, but you can see that fully covered and partially covered, like every topic pretty much rated that. There was one where someone said, no, this isn't covered. What we did see within that is that there were some patterns. Some people had that everything is partially covered. And when we met as a group, we talked about some of those results, and like one shared that, well, I put that in there because I feel strongly health should not be in 9th grade. I feel strongly health should be in 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade. And they should be getting this every single year. And therefore, you're only partially covering what I feel should be covered. The health teachers did talk about at the high school how, as seniors, we do, this is a freshman year course and most freshmen take it and then you're done. But then we do come back as seniors, and we do have all the seniors together where they talk about some of these same topics, maybe in a different way. They also have law enforcement come in and talk about sort of the responsibilities, and now that you're turning 18, there's different responsibilities that are on you as well. So it isn't health class again, but we still are reaching out to students and still making sure that some of these things are front of mind. So we did see that in some of our comments that we had additionally to those. And then Rick, if you go to the next slide, here's just a couple pie charts that came out of the input. Again, Out of the 19 people that were involved, 10 responded. So a 50% response rate is actually pretty good to a survey. Part of it is, though, again, we had these 40 different topics for 4 different grade levels. So some people really, I'm really concerned about 6th grade because my kid's a 5th grade and they're going in 6th grade. So some just looked at a particular grade. Some people went through every single one and had comments about nearly every single slide deck that we present. So I really appreciate the people that were able to put in that much time. They probably put in, I would dare to guess, 30, 40 hours looking at this curriculum and then giving us input. But you can see, like, overall, is it medically accurate? And again, some of it was, I'm not knowledgeable enough to answer that. So you can see of the 8 people, 6 said, yep, it's medically accurate. 2 said it's not. And some of that was, there was a big debate that we had about some of the slides say, instead of male or female, they say body with a penis or body with a vagina. And there was a lot of comment about, well, that's not medically accurate. But we had our school nurse involved. We did have there was 6 people on the panel that were in the medical profession, and they said, that is accurate. We sometimes refer to it that way, versus male, female. But like our teachers talked about, is this is inclusive. It includes everyone. But when we typically talk about this, we say male and female. They're interchangeable. So there was some debate on, are we going to change the slide or not? And we said, well, let's go through the lenses that we need to educate all students, and all students need to feel welcome. Sort of this same idea with some of the external groups that we have bring in. We have SART, which comes in and talks about pregnancy and opportunities within our county, and we have Pierce County comes in. We have PFLAG comes in that talks about LGBTQ+. Some would say that's not medically accurate, so you shouldn't even present it. One of the things that we kept coming back to, though, was the ability for families to opt out. You can either opt out of a particular lesson or opt out of the entire unit with an alternative assignment. So we still want kids doing things around health and their own health, and maybe giving them some choice and voice in what they're going to pick if they do the alternative. We did talk about families will let us know if there's something that's being taught that doesn't align any longer. At the high school level, I believe there was 4 students that were opted out this year, and really only 2 that opted fully out and 2 that did the curriculum but didn't feel comfortable in the classroom. They did it on their own, more sort of independent study. And at the middle school, there was 3 students. So the number of families that are opting out of the curriculum is very low. So if that ever was an issue, again, parents would let us know through the opt-out, and we have those conversations with our families of, why are you opting out? And the other part that our teachers run into, and one of the things that we'll be changing on our opt-out is, did you have this conversation with your student? Because what we run into, our classroom teachers, is the parents say, I'm opting them out. They come to class and they say, well, but I'm not opting out. So there's sort of the debate of, well, then who do you follow? And in Wisconsin, there isn't a particular age, but typically court laws, about age 12 is the age of knowing. And about age 12, they can make their own decisions. So if they come to class and say, I want to be in class, then they're in class. And then we do reach out to the family and let them know that, Johnny participated today. They really wanted to be here. It's their right. So one of the things is just, did you have this conversation with your student? Because oftentimes the students say, I don't know anything about it, and I'm going to be here. So it's more of students wanting to opt in to that. But again, you can see the overall age appropriateness. Again, that goes back to some of them saying we need it for every age. That's why it's not appropriate. But overall, you can see people felt like, yes, we are meeting what we need to be doing. Is it inclusive and non-discriminatory? We had a lot of conversations on that. Again, we need to be welcoming for all students. And if there's a lot of belief that goes into human growth and development, and again, that's the purview of the family should be the primary teacher, but as we even looked around the room, and I fall into this category, myself included, I'm guilty of this, is there weren't any dads. So dad's involvement in human growth and development seems to be on the low end, and I'd say that's the same in my house as well. As if my son has a question, he's going to my wife, and she's then asking me and then going back to him, because that dynamic isn't quite there. So yes, the people that we had on the panel were very involved. They're very involved in their children's lives, and that's great. But also the panel realized not everyone has that support at home. So for the school to not teach certain things, overall the feeling was it's better than opt your family out of it versus we're going to limit what we're presenting to others as well. And again, we talked about what things are appropriate or inappropriate, and then again, how is that inclusive to others? And I want to thank Pastor Amy was on the panel from Joy Lutheran, and she talks about mentoring students and things, and where she has like mental health issues coming in and things like that, and how much kids really need this, which makes her life a little easier. But then also when we talked about resources, she was very adamant that we need to include resources that are non-religious, because not everyone is religious. And sometimes when it is a religious resource, it makes the work of the religious people even harder. So she wanted to make sure that was in the room as well. And then again, the opt-out. So one of the opt-out, when we talked about that is again, including that, did you talk with your student? Are they aware? The other part is like timelines that like parents ask for, can you give us the specific date of each one of these lessons? Well, we can give you the scope and sequence. We can't give you the specific date because if something runs long, maybe that's a 2-day lesson that used to be a 1-day lesson. So some of those things we're able to look at and other things we're not. Rick, if you go to the next slide. So some of the big takeaways for us, sort of as I met with health teachers over the last couple of months, is providing families with that digital access to the curriculum and the timelines. So that's one thing at the grade 5 we've always done. We've always given them the video that we use with the boys for the growing up groups and the girls and the slide deck, so they see everything. And then we say, do you want to opt your kid out? And in my 5 years of being the principal, we have chosen to opt to talk with families and not necessarily opt the children out, but we know that they might not do well in a large group setting. So we do that more in a small group with the nurse, individualized. And they've said like that, they really like being able to see all of it, because also as the parent, as the primary teacher, is they also are looking for resources. Some of them said, I never had human growth and development when I was growing up, so I don't even know what I'm talking about. So if I can at least see your slides, I at least know I'm using the correct terminology. Again, the emphasis on the family being the primary source and knowing that they take on that role, but then also providing families with those resources to have those conversations is something that, with the teacher group we talked about, is something that we can do a better job at. Also, again, that full opt-out and let them understand that. Another input that came from several was educating our families. What are opportunities for our families to learn about some of these topics, especially some topics like LGBTQ+ that were never talked about when we were going through school, but now they are part of society and talked about amongst students and things like that. I did reach out to Penny Peterson because we have had a number of these over the last 8 years. There's been 5 different opportunities on different topics related to this. Penny said the largest group she ever had was 30 from our community that came out to one. But like PFLAG and SART, those are always part of our health fairs that we have. And we've even partnered the health fair with vaccination clinics just because it gives people another reason to be there. But Penny says the engagement from families is very low in that. So we can provide them with those. SART, one of the parents one of the ladies that was actually on the committee, she is part of SART, and she talked about, anytime we can set up a community conversation and have that if we have people that are interested in it. So that'd be something that we're going to look at through community ed, of sending out maybe some surveys to families of what level of interest is there to bring some people in. As we know, there's strong feelings about the human growth and development curriculum. But we all agreed the schools need to provide accurate information, it needs to be age appropriate, and it needs to be welcoming for all. And it needs to be reviewed because things change from time to time. And again, we had 6 people on the panel that had that medical background, and it was great to have them there because they see different things. Some of them work in fertility clinics, and others are just general nurses, and what they see and hear was very valuable for us and for some of the changes that we're going to implement now based on that. But again, several comments about the family being the primary teacher, and just that not all families are comfortable with that. So what resources can we provide? And we felt we would do a better job with that. And some of the resources that came out of that group, that there are additional resources that we even weren't aware of. So very appreciative to everyone that was part of that group. I think on the next slide, Rick, I have who was on the committee. And again, not everyone was able to attend every night. Our biggest night was 16 of them, but again, it takes hours and hours to shuffle through curriculum and for us to build it, but then for others to give us feedback on it. But it's very valuable, the things that we had, and we've come out stronger on the other side, and now having people in our community that are a little better educated about our human growth and development curriculum and age appropriateness and resources and things like that. They just go out and they're just better advocates for us, and then as questions come up, they have all of our contact information, so they're just another conduit to families through the people that were on this group as well. So that's my update. What questions do we have?
Anyone have questions here?
No questions.
Don't have questions, but it sounds like it went well.
I don't have a question, but I just have a comment. I just turned an essay in to Miss Budworth actually last night about this topic.
She did a very nice job on it.
I think this is phenomenal that we're looking into it a little bit more, because we're in a generation now where when students have questions, they're not going to teachers or health professionals, they're going straight to TikTok instead. And it's spreading misinformation. So I'm just so glad that we're doing something about this.
And I just want to thank, for many districts try to shirk this responsibility. It's a very hot topic. It's a hot potato. It has torn communities apart. Michael and the teachers, the health teachers, did a remarkable job. If we shared with you all the materials that the committee went through, you can look on the 40 kind of the modules. You can look by grade, by season, and I think it was really, really helpful. Michael shared all the feedback that the staff or the committee was giving, and I just want to thank Michael for being able to navigate this. I think, as you said, we came out better, stronger. You'll have a updated curriculum, and I think we did. We went above and beyond, and I think it's going to pay dividends down the road. So, thank you.
All right, I'm going to call for a recess for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
All right. So we're gonna pause. We'll be back in 5 minutes, about 9:05. Thanks, everyone. All right, we're gonna gavel back in. We're on item G of info and discussion update on Alara job study.
We just cleared a room.
Cliff notes.
I'm trying.
Cliff notes.
Come on. All right, as everybody is well aware, we were supported by our community to invest in our staff in programming, and we wanted to make sure that we were able to deliver on that promise over the next 5 years. We're heading into a biennium. We won't have all the information with regards to public education funding prior to the end of the year, and so that'll put some or suppress some of our ability to figure out how we would have a long-term plan with regards to compensation and benefits. That said, I know that the board has been committed to make sure that we are able to move and signal to our staff about the increases heading into the summer, so that they're well aware of what their salaries will look like and what that would play out for the fall of 2025. Earlier tonight, you heard from a very specific group about professional development and with regards to their PDPs. That is separate and is something that we're aiming to act on prior to the end of the fiscal year. What have you done since January is that we have been working with Alara, and they have been able to provide what I would say is, since January, 6 key areas, and they really looked at compensation, both policy and practices. And we talked a little bit about how they need to be aligned, they have to be balanced, and over time, it's the best fit. And so Marty oftentimes would talk about, there are things a consultant can come in and talk to you about. There are decisions that we have made that I've even recommended over the last 10 years that may not always be at the right place at the right time for where we are. And so those are things that we always need to come back to: alignment, balance, and goodness of fit. The employee benefits, I'll go lighter on that tonight given the hour, but what I do want to share is that we've met 3 times with Alara in April. All of the work that Chantel and Kara Klatt and I've been doing behind the scenes is pretty significant with regards to getting data and having us be able to work with the board and identify what is going to be our identified group to benchmark. The benchmark is so that you can continue to look at, have you hit your target? And the target is to be able to match the middle border and River Falls with regards to starting salaries for BA and MA. We know that we're behind, and so the question is, how do we get there? The employee benefits, we know that we're above the overall kind of comparison group. We're adding certain things, but we always know that there can be a mismatch. What we think may be something that as employers, that employees value, that might not always be in alignment. And as you move forward, know that you are one of the only districts that is doing a $2,000 match for a 403B. It may be something that we look at through our surveys. We have agreed, and I've run this by Chantel and also Jim, is that we are going to look at making sure that we have full attention of our staff, do the survey in early August when they're coming back, be able to inform and educate like we talked about, and then be able to survey again so that it could be lack of knowledge. Once I know, I can do better. Once I know, I might make better decisions. Recruiting practices, we've already updated some of the things, and tonight you just approved 3 positions. We have very few positions open in the Prescott Public Schools other than support staff. We're looking for custodians, food service, and bus drivers. So we're very, very healthy and in that regard. And then turnover data. So, as you know, we started with a purpose. We wanted to be very specific, and we do have these slides available, so we can send them to you. If you want to keep taking pictures, you're welcome to, but we also have the PDF of this, and Courtney can share that. We defined, as I mentioned, we had 3 meetings in April, and then we wanted to make sure that we had those comparisons, and we have some of those comparisons that we have shared both throughout the board. I've met with every school building. We've met with Tracy and the group of the representatives, and I've met with each of the admin teams, supervisors throughout since January. The school board, you understand that there's also some headwinds. So what we don't know, other than the 325 is guaranteed, is that the new biennium budget will not be in-house prior to the end of this fiscal year. And that doesn't mean, and this is not a one and done, this is something about a process. And so you now have a process, you have a roadmap, and we'll talk about how that's setting up. Federal funding, we talked about this earlier in the meeting, it is not guaranteed for next year. There's a lot of speculation, and the bills at the federal level have not come in yet. Human Resources is committed to providing a 5-year plan, and so you'll see that in the roadmap at the end. We did ask you to be able to respond back to me, and then we set up one-on-one meetings. And the first question was, how satisfied were you with Alara and the benchmarking process? You were across the board independently responding, didn't see each other's responses, but 100% were satisfied with the process. In summation, just kind of hitting the top parts, is that we identified the external benchmarks in March and April. We invested in maintaining these benchmarks, and so we, as you'll see, have identified that it is impossible to build Rome, or rebuild Rome, if you will, in a day or in a year. And so Prescott Public Schools has been funded at the 4th percentile on per pupil funding. We also have been in a situation where Act 10 came in and changed a lot of the structures with regards to how we can use dollars, how it can be partnered with our staff, and yet we have made, in 2018, major changes and now are coming back with some significant changes as well. There's some non-cash rewards, and I think that'll fall more to the HR long-term plan, and I'll sum that up at the end. Kind of using a very similar grid that we did for when we were talking about the operating levy, is that we have established a structure. Now that the structure is in place, the idea is that we'll do a 2x2 grid. We will always talk about raises to our licensed staff, and then we'll be coming back for support staff, is making sure that there's an annual percent increase, and we're going to be tying it to inflation or inflation plus. So it's CPI plus. Right now for the next year, schools are locked in for CPI with the bargaining units at 2.95. But we know that we're 5% behind in the BA. I can share that there was a little bit of new work. We're not quite as far back on the MA as we initially thought, but it is still more significant than the BA. So it's somewhere between 5% for BA and about 8% behind on the masters. So we're going to always have a closing the gap. Now, the best thing about this is once you have that structure in place like we do in education, we want to monitor. We're going to look at whether or not the structure that we put in place across years is having the intended outcome. Are we closing the gap, and are we closing it at the rate that is appropriate? And that's probably the last thing the board's going to have to nail down, is we agreed that you can't do it in 1 year, but the question is it going to be 2? Is it going to be 3? And that's probably going to have to wait until the legislature finishes its business in Madison. What we did agree is that it is 100%. Anytime you have structures in place and you have many different things changing, either state laws, federal laws, being capped or not having funding for 6 of 8 years, that sometimes there are going to be anomalies that occur in the current structure. Those anomalies really break into a couple things, and we wanted to kind of point those out. First and foremost is that staff, when they come to us, if they are not new to profession, oftentimes have worked in charter schools, parochial schools, other states. They may have, or other surrounding districts. They have professional experience. We have had 4 HR directors in the last 5 to 6 years. Each of them had big city or new or outside of the educational system. And what we know is that there was not a consistent way of granting the number of professional years that individuals came into the Prescott Public Schools. Somewhere between. Some districts do not allow or count professional experience. They say we start you at X and then you move up within our system. I would never advocate for that. I don't think that's appropriate. Educators are professionals. They come in with years of experience. Some districts will give you 100% of the years that you had elsewhere, as long as you have the documentation. Somewhere in between, I think, is where Chantel can come back to you with Jim early in August, and I think it should have a chart that says we give 100% credit for all the years of experience elsewhere, or for your first 5 years, we give 50%. For 6 through 10, we give 75%. Whatever it is, it should be documented, it should be in the handbook, and it should be known. In addition, we have talked about that there are certain positions, and this is critically important for everybody to understand. It is not about hazard pay. It's not about I work harder, or that I have a tough group of students, or that I have a small group of students that behave in a certain way. It's about what are the positions driven by the market that we have fewer staff applying and that we have difficulty filling. So it's market-driven, not necessarily about, I have X, Y, or Z responsibilities, I work harder than my colleagues, I work harder than the ELE, I work harder than English, or English, I score 150 papers a night. It's not about trying to figure out who's outworking, it's really about the exceptions of, and right now the board has identified special education, secondary math and science, tech ed, and then talked a little bit about licensure, and that is still where we have to kind of finalize. I think those things should be, again, something that HR works on over the summer, comes back to you in August, and would have in that, and step 4, it'd be published, it would be in protocols, and it would be printed in the employee handbook. When staff come back in August, we can have those conversations and update them. And then, obviously, every time we implement a plan, we want to make sure that we're monitoring it, we review it, we refine it, we come back to the board, and as I've talked with Jim, is that there should be a defined cycle, right? So how often is the report coming to you? But remember, it's to remain market competitive. And so markets change, and so sometimes people are going into the trades, then they go into technology or coding, then they go to med school, then they go to law school, then they go into education. So the markets will change, and we need to be able to be responsive to it. Whether or not the cycles will change as quickly in education, that remains to be seen, but I think you start with the plan, implement it, monitor, and update. So really what we're talking about is being consistent and competitive with our salary structure. We also talked about some benefits and kind of that are non-financial. I'm going to skip through this, but in special education, we do provide training through CISA 11. We do have collaboration Mondays. We do have 10 professional development days. There's a lot of things that we put in place to make sure our staff have the stimulation and ongoing curiosity and continued refinement in their profession. But really what I think most of our staff want to hear about is that transition to salaries for the fall. And so our goal is to be more kind of consistent, uniform, and standardized. So we did talk a little bit with you, and we kind of wanted to know whether or not the information that you had since January had given us the opportunity that you believe we could make that decision and close the gaps of 5 and 10% within a year. And you came back 100% that you do not believe this is a one-year executable plan. And I think I believe that that is prudent, given there's so many unknowns, but I think you can make a huge step. And so what was good to see is that we talked a little bit specifically about making sure that it can be done across time. The primary thing that we're going to be challenged by as a district is the fund balance. This all started back in November of '23 when we went and started to talk about a referendum for operations. In operations, you have a policy, and the policy is whether or not you can have 3 to 4 months of cash, because it's all about cash flow, and money doesn't come from the state all at once. It comes across time, sometimes even after the fiscal year is closed. So it's important. What we've done is looked at, it's going to be more accurate early on. The challenge you have as a board is you got to bend that curve. You have to work to figure out how we can, with decreased enrollment, decrease your expenses. With decreasing enrollment, you're going to be flat in revenue, even though you got the 1.2 operating. The operating goes on per pupil. Fewer kids, it means that the revenue next year is identical to this year. So, to some degree, expenses can't keep going up, but you don't have a choice on utilities. You don't have a choice on food. One of the things that Mike Hoyka and I just looked at is that we cut his budget nearly 20% or $20,000 for supplies. And then he couldn't stay in that budget because we still have 4 buildings, we still need paper, we still need towels, we still need soap. It was the wrong budget to cut. We are increasing his budget for next year by 5% based on the costs and the prices. The main point of this is that you made decisions to make sure that we've mapped out, Kara and I, for you, is that by the end of this year, we should be at $5.5 million as a fund balance. We ended last year with 5.2. So we need about $300,000 in surplus by the end of this year to get back to where we were. You had a pothole last year where we had $600,000 in deficit spending, right? And so what we're trying to do is look at that across time. What you can see is whether or not I used CPI inflation of 2.5 or 2.0. It's nearly indifferent. It's $100,000.
Can I
Mike?
ask a quick question? Because you mentioned to get back to where we were in the fund balance. You're referring to getting back to the policy states what the floor is, and the floor is 5.493 or 5.5, right?
Yeah, I'm rounding 5.5, yeah.
So not to get back to where we were, but to get back to at least the floor of what our policy states, we need that amount of money.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, and it's all about your bond rating. It's about not having to borrow and use your short-term loan in the fall and winter, which then accrues interest and yada, 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 right? So that's the point of this. Obviously, by 2027, 2028, you'll have more information and made other decisions. But the goal here is you want to, if you continue on the trend of expenses, and we don't bend that, then your fund balance continues to go up, okay? So, do you believe that we could get this information out? We were pretty confident. We did have to change a couple meetings because of emergency and time-bound issues that popped up late in April. That's why we're presenting here now for the first time, and likely we'll need one more work session with you. This is just a reminder of the starting discrepancy between our target groups. We're about 2,000 below on BA, and quick 5,000 on masters. Okay, so this is the 2x2 chart that we agreed on. This is the methodology that Kara and I have been running. We've run different scenarios for you. Basically, the first would be that we'd be at CPI plus, then we'd have whatever else we can put in there would be closing the gap, and the total fall projection is that we're aiming for a 4 to 5% increase on base pay. Now, that will, depending on where we are, will impact the budget by $350,000 to $500,000 this year. Again, we have to go back through and run and put this onto the scale, but that's kind of between what we've been able to do internally and what also matches up with Marty and Coyle's presentation to you during work sessions. Now, for the staff, what they really care about is that bottom line. What is the total increase going to be on the steps and lanes? We're just using the two charts, the two lines to be able to say we're always going to hit inflation, and then we're going to close the gap, inflation and gap, and that's what we modeled all the way through. The challenge I'll share with you is that when we went to 5%, within 2 years, you would already be deficit spending unless you make significant cuts. And so the challenge based on the decreased enrollment and the way that expenses currently are, 5% might be a little bit too ambitious. We are talking specifically, remember, the goal was to get to the first year of the third biennium. So the legislature's meeting right now on funding. For the most part, I don't see any additional money coming from Madison. We have the 325. The thing that you have to monitor closely is special education. We cross-subsidize. For every dollar that we get in special education funding, it's $1 back to Fund 10. We talked a little bit about the gap between what employees value and what employers value. And so there might be some money that gets shifted there in the future to put on salary. Those are conversations that you can have for the future. The main goal is that we talked about about if your fund balance is sufficient, you could start to tap into it while you're waiting for the second biennium, right? And then the idea is, can you get to the third biennium? And it really will always come down to this chart. Is by 2029, we want to be able to, we said that we would be okay using fund balance to cover us before the third biennium makes their decisions, right? And so change at Madison is slow, but I think by the next biennium, you make some cost containments, you consolidate instructional groupings, you become more efficient. You won't need $6 million in 2029. You might only need 5.7 million, right? And that's a 300,000 that gets into salaries. So those are the things that you now have a standard that you're mapping to. You have a way of articulating back to the finance, HR, and then the staff with how compensation will work. And you're able to then weather the storm while you wait for additional information to come in. Questions or clarifications?
Let's just go around. Tanya, you want to start? Questions or comments on anything?
Yeah, I mean, just, I guess if I was looking at the presentation here, I don't know why I don't have it up. Yeah, I guess I don't necessarily have a ton of questions. I would be curious to see, I'd have to go back actually to the LARA study and see what percentage do we need to increase in order to get to where we need to be for our BAs and our MAs and all that kind of stuff. To see, because if we're going to offer 2.95%, let's say, increase, what percentage do we need to add each year to get to the right spot? So that's kind of the information.
And that's and let me just kind of clarify, because that's where I think this model will be really helpful, is that this is why, as a board, I would recommend that we, as a finance department, HR, come back to you, would be that keeping it CPI is going to keep you in the same place. It's not going to change your station, right? And so we have to at least do that, and it's that X factor that's going to start basically nipping at the heels, right? Right now, we know we're 5% behind, right? And so, or 10%, although it's really 8 for MA. So one of the things would be is, can you give a 8% raise next year? Not based on the information that you have, right? If better information comes through after the summer, you can always make updated decisions, and you've done many different things with stipends or hero pay when we were in COVID. So it's not without the ability to make adjustments, but I think in general, the sooner we can get at least updated scale and a known model out there to our staff, I think the better confidence they'll have, and also retain people from having any wandering eyes.
Yeah, and I know our goal is to do that before the end of the year, basically, so people know. And I mean, that highlighted X, that's really the question we have. And I think we just have to sit down and talk about that to get there. I was happy to see we both, or all of us, chose that this is a 2-year thing, so that's not really a thing that we have to decide and debate on. We know we've got 2 years. That's important. We talked, and I don't think this is the priority right now, but do we pay differently for different license areas or positions, that kind of thing. I think we really concentrate on this for the time being, and then next year really kind of start mapping that out more as we go. I've said this before, I'm not really a fan of the stipends, because I think it's just like this one-time shot, but it doesn't really, we need to change the base, right? And it doesn't really fix the problem too much. So, but that's where I'm at, and I know that that's a closed session of conversation when it comes to contracts and stuff, but.
Pat?
I think the one thing that would help, because I know we're looking at a special board meeting, but and Rick, we talked about kind of like how we did with the fund balance. if there's any way that, that you guys can model up some scenarios on these percentages with our current cost structure and revenue structure. And then that gives us, I mean, that gives us some really good data to understand the costs that need to get cut. So when it needs to happen and/or influences how quickly we're able to close the gap. So that would be, you know, and I know it's not just as easy as Kara pushing a button, but I think some of those models, some of those scenarios would be extraordinarily helpful.
Yep.
No, that's what I was hoping we could see, is something with the different options, what that looks like, how far out we have money, how much we have to maintain in that fund balance, and what our ultimate goal is, and what it looks like getting there. Because, yeah, without those different scenarios on paper, it's really hard to visualize.
Helen?
I have nothing else to add. It's kind of the same everyone else said.
Yeah, I really think it's important. The communication on this piece is super important. It's not this is not a one-year deal. This is a multi-year deal. I'll even go as far as to say it's not just a two-year deal. This is something that we're going to be continuing to try to close the gap. That's however long that takes. And part of it is not just what we do with the dollars that were secured by the referendum, but it's also how do we optimize our operational expenses. We talked a lot about benefits on the 30th and looking at ways to reduce costs there, you know, and one of the big topics was, do we go to a self-funded model? Those are, and then there's other perks that we're doing. You mentioned the 403B, the contribution, the match there up to $2,000. I think we put $200,000 a year towards that. Those are all things that got to be on the table that might be above and beyond what other districts are doing, that could be put towards closing the gap. And I think that's where we're going to be looking at staff to kind of help us make those decisions, or at least give us input to help make those decisions. So I think I caution this slide because it looks to me like, oh, we're just going to give them another 1.5%. That's not true. This is a multi-year problem we're trying to solve. We can't solve it all at once because it's going to put us in a bad spot if we do. We'll be deficit spending in 2 years. So we have to be smart about it, and we have to watch the headwinds, to use your language, Rick, and be smart about how we try to close that gap, knowing that that's always going to be one of our top priorities is to try to close the gap and be competitive with our neighboring districts. Anything else, you guys? No?
No.
Okay.
Then a quick one. Do you have?
I mean, what about some timing?
Well,
how do we go about, what's next?
So the next time we meet officially is June 18th. I believe that it would be helpful if we could have something early June. And a doodle calendar would go out, since we had to bump the May date. Any other things before we move to the last one?
Yeah, I guess that's about as early as we can do it. So I guess that's where we're at. Well, it'll be probably sometime in June.
And that would be in hopes for taking some action.
Yeah, it could be a work session, take action, or definitely act. I mean, what I would worry, or you do it on the 18th.
Yeah. Okay.
I'd have liked to have gotten it done before the school year was out, but it's just not possible. So we've poured through a lot of data. We've had a lot of meetings on this, and we just want to make the right decisions. We don't want to rush into something without having everything crossed, all the T's crossed. So, okay. I think that we'll move on then. We're going to item H.
So I need a quick show of hands. You are all invited to the graduation. who can be there?
I think we already answered this.
Did you?
We already answered.
You
There's
did get
3 of
three?
us
Okay.
going.
So we did notify that there is a quorum that will be, we posted because we just wanted to cover our bases. 7 o'clock here at Prescott High School, and we can't wait to celebrate the class of 2025.
All right, we're good?
Yep.
Moving on, next item is recognition of visitors. Anybody care to be recognized? All right, the board's going to consider a motion to convene the closed session under exemptions 1985 1D in room 118 at PHS, and I'm just taking a look at the agenda here, agenda board here. And the topics for 1985 1D are board consideration of PDP proposals, keys to literacy training, proposed stipend parameters, lead cook stipend parameters, lead custodial stipend parameters, discuss differential parameters for salary negotiations among admin and supervisors. Those are the topics.
Do we have to go, or can we propose to add this on to the meeting in June? Only because I think that this is a discussion.
Yeah, you can do whatever you wish. I would suggest that I think the first topic.
Which is the one that will take a while.
Yeah.
But I think it would be helpful to lay out, because it gives you the ability to at least set some parameters of what else you would want, so that the next meeting that we
I
have.
think we gotta go. We gotta do some, we gotta get in and do some of this, hopefully all of it, but I think we should at least hit the topics.
Okay.
Because you can always table decisions in there.
I'm not proposing it because so you guys go for it.
So moved.
Okay. I'll second it. So we have a motion, a second to go into closed session. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we will go into closed session now,
What time?
and it is 9:40 right now, 9:45.